There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. The first item on the order paper is questions addressed to ministers in the Peace and Security Cluster. Members may press the talk button on their desks if they wish to ask a supplementary question. The first question has been asked by the Honorable LKB Mpumlwana to the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. I've been informed that the Deputy Minister will be answering questions on behalf of the Minister. The Honorable, the Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The African Union at its recently held 25th Ordinary Assembly of Heads of State and Government issued a declaration on migration, expressing serious concerns about migration of thousands of African people to Europe and in the process getting killed in the Mediterranean Sea. And they also decided to combat human trafficking and smuggling of migrants through the implementation of provision of the UN Convention. And they also requested the African Union Commission to arrange an executive council retreat to have in-depth discussion on migration and to work towards the development of a common position for Africa before the Malta Conference on Migration with the European Union that is due to take place in November 2015. The Commission is expected to report on the implementation of this declaration at the next African Union Assembly in January 2016. Thank you very much.
Supplementary questions, Honorable Mpumlwana.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister, for your informative reply. It is highly appreciated. May the Honorable Deputy Minister share further information on the content of the Declaration on Migration, with particular reference to the actions that the Assembly of Heads of States committed to undertake.
The Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The content really is a commitment to speed up the implementation of the continent-wide visa-free regimes, including issuance of visas at ports of entry for Africans and based on the principle of reciprocity, but also to expedite the operationalization of the African passport that would, as a start, facilitate free movement of persons, but more importantly, to strengthen the efforts to combat human trafficking and smuggling of migrants through the implementation of the provision of UN Convention.
The Honorable James of the DA. Honorable James.
Unless my name is changed.
No,
it's
there are
Kalyan.
two names here. There's James and Kalyan, and I most definitely recognized Honorable James. Honorable James.
Madam Speaker, the Honourable James hasn't pressed the button.
The name is here. So somebody press the button. Honorable Kalyan.
There might be a short circuit somewhere, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you, Minister, South Africa has been largely silent on this crisis, and I listen to you now talk about a retreat. Now, a retreat at this stage is ridiculous. There is a humanitarian crisis going on. The world's largest refugee camp in Dadaab is about to close, and it can only capacitate 90,000 refugees. At the moment, there's almost 500,000 there. Now, what is your knowledge, Minister, of the African Union's response to the ongoing refugee crisis on its own continent in Burundi, Kenya, Libya, Central African Republic, South Sudan? What has it been apart from the ridiculous answer that they are now going on a retreat?
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Well, definitely, Madam Speaker. Whatever is happening in different countries, I would assume it's being dealt with. The Africa, yes, I would assume it's being dealt with. Because in these different countries, there are different regional structure. Like we would, if there's a crisis in SADC, we would be preoccupied with that crisis. So there are different structures that are dealing with those matters. The African Union, when they met, they were dealing with broad issues. And this is the issue that must be reported to in January. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Matthias of the EFF.
Madam Speaker, I pressed.
Go ahead, Honorable Maxim.
Can I go on, Madam Speaker?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The Deputy Minister, the out-migration of Africans seeking greener pastures in Europe and other places is a result of the continent not being in control of its own wealth and using this to benefit the people. Despite Africa being the richest continent on earth, what is the country doing to promote African ownership of African wealth, strong trade amongst African countries, and local beneficiation of African minerals in Africa's soils to ensure that African people benefit?
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. That is exactly why the charter that was agreed to, the declaration that was agreed to in the AU, talks about stabilizing one Libya, but also create a visa-free area, an intra-trade process, creating peace in the continent so that the people of the continent don't need to go and look for greener pastures when they can have greener pastures in their countries. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Reverend Mishwe.
Deputy Speaker, Dr. Ron Daniels wrote an article in which he expresses his concern that, and I quote, "Far too many heads of state in Africa were behaving as if the only goal of the Black liberation movement was to replace white faces with black faces," close quote. And he further explained that he was responding to what seemed to be an emerging pattern of self-serving, self-aggrandizing, corrupt, and self-perpetuating leaders who were more interested in power and personal fortunes than the interests of the masses of the people. So many migrants who left for Europe claim that they have run away from oppressive regimes that repress dissent and brutally crush all forms of opposition. They claim that they see an opportunity to realize their fullest potential where democratic principles are espoused and freedom of expression is tolerated more than they experience in their homeland. So what I want to know is, what can the African Union do to change this perception, if it is a perception? And also, what can they do to ensure that these concerns raised by these migrants in Africa are addressed, which in consequence will ensure that such migration will be stemmed? Thank you.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think, Madam Speaker, it's clear that there's so much that has been done by AU in the continent. And looking back at what were the challenges before, what were the takeover by military, and I'm sure if we are sincere, we would see that those things have reduced drastically, because there is a discussion of democratic processes of electing presidents. There is a discussion where even it's not even discussion, it's agreements, where, you know, regions are responsible for different countries, and if there's a problem in a particular country, everybody goes and try to solve the problem. Well, we might still have few areas, if any, but really, I think it is a perception in most cases that in the AU, people go because they are looking for more democratic processes. Yes, they might be looking for greener pastures because there's still poverty in their areas. Even people from South Africa might go and look for greener pastures because we're still dealing with the legacy of apartheid, there's poverty, so they might go to areas where they know they can use their skills and that.
We now come to question number 477 that has been asked by the Honorable Kenye to the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The debate on the reform of the United Nations Security Council has been going on for more than 20 years with no substantive progress. And South Africa has been actively engaged in the process since 1994. Our argument is that the world have changed since 1945, when the UN was formed. The Security Council composition does not reflect the geopolitical realities of today, and therefore we call for expansion of Security Council with at least 2 new permanent seats to be assigned to Africa. And here in September 2015, under the leadership of an African president of the General Assembly, Mr. Sam Kutesa, the Foreign Minister of Uganda, the General Assembly finally adopted a document that will henceforth serve as the base for the intergovernmental negotiations. This is a major breakthrough, given that in more than 20 years of negotiations, there's never been negotiating text. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Kenye.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. Given your response, has been pursuing the struggle for the restructuring of the United Nations Security Council for decades. Can you enlighten the House on some of the specific steps that South Africa has taken over the years in pursuit of this struggle, as well as what is the position of South Africa on this matter? Thank you.
The Honorable Deputy Minister.
The debate on the reform of the United Nations Security Council has been, as I said, ongoing for the last 20 years. And since then, our argument was that we want to be included, we're not colonies and anymore, And I think we've achieved that, as I said, for the first time, because South Africa has been pushing this issue. We've achieved, you know, the negotiating date that we need to get a report from. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Maxon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Deputy Minister, what guarantee does Africa has that if South Africa secure a permanent seat in the Security Council, it will serve the Africa interest, especially after the aftermath of the NCNGC, when you said you want to pull out from the ICC? What role are you going to play as the country to make sure that we are secured? Thank you.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Well, I think as a continent, as AU, we're saying we want at least 2 seats in the Security Council. Definitely those seats, the guarantee is that those seats will not be South African seats. Yes, we might be appointed as a country, but they would be part of the negotiation of the Zuluini consensus, and we would be representing the African Union in the Security Council. That is the guarantee. Thank you.
The Honorable Mare.
There's something wrong with the button. Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you so much for your reply, but you know, it's not much of an answer. We agree, I think, that we need to address this historical injustice, and we need to do something about it. Now, the Libyan Deputy President has pledged support from African Arab countries. Sierra Leone the President of Sierra Leone is a champion. But you're not clear on what is South Africa's position. Are you going to engage with your partners in China, who are on the permanent council, and with Russia, given that we have such a good relationship with them? Are you going to engage with them to lobby for this position so that we can uphold the commitment to human rights and the rule of law?
Honorable Deputy Minister.
I think, Madam Speaker, when you negotiate and when you are in such forums, you make relationships, you lobby everybody, but even more importantly, you lobby your friends and those that you have bilaterals. When we go around and having bilaterals with different countries, one of the things we talk about is some of the areas that we need to have a common agreement in platforms like UN. So the answer is yes. We will lobby our friends, but we will not lobby those friends for only South Africa. We will lobby it for the whole of continent. Yes, we will lobby those for the human rights culture that we also have, by the way. Thank you.
The Honorable Mwango.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Arising from the Deputy Minister's response, I would like to know whether South Africa is, or indeed Africa, is speaking with one voice on the matter of the restructuring of the UN in general, and in particular, the addition of 2 more seats which should be allocated to Africa. Thank you.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, Honorable Member, we're speaking with one voice. I said earlier we have an agreement that is a Zuluini consensus, and that this agreement takes into account that we have small countries, we have big countries, we have strong countries financially, but if we want to work as a collective, you can't just go and lobby for yourself and completely ignore the whole region, the whole continent we are working in. So yes, what the transformation we're talking about and the number of seats for AU, it's something that is shared by all the members. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, question number 503 has been asked by the Honorable Breitenbach to the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. The Honorable, the Minister.
Thank you, Speaker. The honorable member should be aware that the matter at hand is currently the subject of a constitutional court a challenge, which is due to be heard in February next year, and that in terms of Rule 66 of the rules of the Assembly, we may not reflect on matters that are pending decision of the courts. So it would be inappropriate for me to reflect on a matter that is specifically the subject of such inquiry. I'd also like to remind, sorry, it's Rule 67, the sub judice rule. I'd also like to remind the honorable member that this matter was also before this House, and it was a subject of two ad hoc committee inquiries and reports that were tabled and adopted by this House, and that the honorable member's party was an active participant in that parliamentary process. And as you are aware, Rule 64, although relates to matters of the same session, and this matter had been dealt with in a previous session, I would nonetheless recommend to the honorable member that if they so wish to call upon this House to reflect on its decision in this regard, does so by way of moving an amendment or rescission of the decision of the House in this regard. I thank you.
The Honorable Breitenbach.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the advice, Mr. Minister. I'll certainly give it some thought. I would like to point out to you, however, that the process that took place in this House was obviously now, in the light of this judgment, clearly flawed, and our minority report has been vindicated. However, that being the case, and it being entirely predictable that you would take refuge in the sub judice rule, does this mean that in the future you intend abiding by the ruling of court proceedings affecting your department going forward?
The Honorable, the Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is, as a matter of principle, our commitment as government generally, and in particular as this ministry, to uphold the orders and decisions of courts and actually comply therewith. I just want to indicate to the honorable member that, as my answer indicates, the matter has not yet been ruled upon by a court. It is the subject of a court challenge that is still pending, and therefore there is no compliance that is due in this regard. And further, to remind her again that, as indicated in my response, this is a matter that this House has duly deliberated and decided upon. And if the member so wishes this House to revisit its own decision in this regard, does so in terms of the applicable rules of this House. I thank you.
The Honorable Simang, IFP.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I hear that the Honorable Minister is not inclined to comment on matters that are still pending in court. But what I am asking is common knowledge. It is common course in our law that if somebody has been unduly enriched, that somebody must pay for the benefits unduly received. However, our president often argues with regard to this case that he did not ask for the benefits, that is the additions which are non-security in his home state. Would you agree that his argument is not a valid defense in law? And if you agree, would you advise him accordingly?
The Honorable the Minister.
I would once again advise the honorable member that if he or his party wishes to argue that point of law, the appropriate forum to argue it is a court of law, and given the fact that there is in fact a matter pending before the courts, he should well be advised to consider, if he hasn't done so, to apply to that court to be joined in the proceedings so that he can so aptly articulate his legal argument as he has just done so. I thank you.
The Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Minister. Minister, on a more general principle approach, if one considers the Supreme Court of Appeal that is now giving clarity on the binding nature of the remedial findings of the Public Protector, and given what the Public Protector has indicated that there are a number of state departments that at that stage and prior to the SCA decision were not complying with the findings of the Public Protector because of the uncertainty brought by the earlier decision in the Western Cape, would you not agree at this stage that it is unambiguous and there's no question about it that every government department must comply with the remedial actions, and where they do not, action should be taken against those government departments? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you again, Speaker. Once again, I'd like to indicate to the honorable member that indeed the SCA made a certain decision relating to the status of the decisions of the Public Protector, which goes against a clear position that was adopted by the Court, and therefore it speaks for itself that the courts themselves are not on the same page in this matter, and that's why an appeal is brought against the decision of the SCA to the Constitutional Court, which is the final arbiter to clarify the legal position in this regard. And I would just plead with the honorable member to exercise just a little bit of patience. It's only February next year, and the matter can be put to rest. So thank you.
Honorable Horn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Minister, while you're giving advice, it would maybe be prudent to also remind yourself that repeating a moot point doesn't assist you. The question, however, is, Honourable Minister, is it your stance that while in principle you will obey rulings by our courts, your interpretations of the law are believed to be by you and your department superior to that of our courts, and that you will keep on ignoring these even though the Supreme Court of Appeal has found you to be in the wrong?
Honorable Minister.
May I also remind the honorable member that what was before the Supreme Court of Appeal was not the matter that is the subject of this question. What was before the Supreme Court of Appeal related to a different matter relating to the SABC. Now, I just want to indicate that in this regard, there is no decision. There is no decision of any court, higher or lower. So there is no disregard of a court order or a court decision in this regard. Be patient. February is around the corner. Go and enjoy Christmas, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year. Thank you very much.
We now come to question number 512, asked by the Honorable Khoza to the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans. The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks, Honorable Khoza, for the question. The matter of the CFO of the Department of Military Veterans. The CFO was charged and found guilty by the chairperson of the disciplinary hearing on the following grounds. One, which is charge one, gross dishonesty in that he instructed an employee to effect payment of his resettlement amount of 54,533 on the bus system instead of the PESAL system, thereby concealing this payment from the IRP5 for the purpose of tax recalculations. Charge 2 was failure to ensure that a tax directive was obtained from SARS prior to the payment of his resettlement amount, which resulted in this payment not accumulating on the IRP5, thereby conducting himself in a manner that amounted to tax evasion. The third account was gross dereliction of duties as CFO by failure to exercise due care and regard in the performance of his duties, in that he failed to provide a proper account of the petty cash to the tune of 30,000 rands, being an amount which he withdrew from the department's account. In handing down the sanction of dismissal, the chairperson of the hearing held that there is prima facie evidence that the trust relationship between the employer and the employee is broken, and the employee had shown no remorse, and that he is insolent and incompatible to continue working in the department. Number 2, yes, the employee was placed on suspension with full pay for 8 months to the tune of 550,983 rands.
The Honorable Khoza.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the answer to my question. We are well aware, Minister, that the answers you are giving today are not correct. As much as the suspension, the reason it took so long, it is because he was busy challenging the manner in which he was suspended because of the issues that were going on inside the department. But nonetheless, because these are the answers that you're giving us, but you know very well it's not the truth. You know there's more than what you're giving us. But what I'm going to ask you now, how common are these occurrences in the department, and what is being done to address these problems? Thank you.
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I'll address myself to this specific case which you have raised. You are saying the information which I'm giving you is not accurate. Actually, it is accurate. And if I may say this, by the time this employee was suspended, okay, he in fact was AWOL for months from work. Now, it's a matter which I did not want to raise here and now. He was AWOL for about 4 months without having signed a leave form, nothing. By the time then a decision was taken to suspend him, the man had not been to work for those months. Now, if you're asking me how common these cases are, maybe they are common, probably in all government departments across, I don't know. But as for now, I am referring myself to the matter of the CFO of the Department of Military Veterans. Thank you. Awumamelanga nomamela uncokola nomnyundu uzawuphinda ubuze. Andithetha nawe, ndithetha
Point of order, Chair.
What's the point of order, honorable member?
Madam Chair, I don't think the manner in which the minister is addressing me is proper.
No, that's not a point of
no,
order.
but on a serious note, I don't
Honorable
think
member,
it is proper the manner in which she's addressing me.
It
She
might
is
be
lying.
a serious
we know very
note,
well
but
that the
it's not a point of
CFO,
order.
because of the supply chain department,
Honorable
the manner in which
member,
things were being done there. You're not telling the truth, but
Honorable
now you're
member,
busy attacking
please
me.
take your seat. That's
You
not
must
a
tell
point
the
of
truth.
order. That's not a point of order.
No, but point of orders, Speaker.
What's the point of order?
The practice that yourself has given us is that when honorable members speak in Parliament, they address the chair. We don't address each other, and those are the directives.
That can be correct, honorable member,
Yes.
but it's not a point of order. And could you just take your
No,
seat?
but
Take your seat, Honorable
If as a
Chewani.
presiding chair, you allow that we address each other like
Please take a seat.
this, it's going to make it difficult for us to be able to respect each other.
Take your seat.
But can you rule on that, please?
I'm not going to rule. Honorable Esau.
Order, Speaker. Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Maxon, please, I haven't recognized you. I
Please.
don't know why you are on your feet.
Please recognize me, Speaker.
For what?
I just want to address you, Speaker.
No.
But Speaker, this is very
You
wrong.
don't
of
just
you.
get up and say, I want to address you.
Yeah, and I'm asking you. I
You
said order, and then you said why I'm on my feet, and then I explained that I want to address you.
What's the point of order?
But Speaker, I think you must treat us fairly. Honorable Chiwane is raising a point that says that here we don't speak to each other here. We speak through to you.
Yes,
And you are supposed to
Honorable-
correct that.
Honorable Maxon, you might be telling the truth, but you can't make me endorse that it's supposed to be a point of order when it is not.
But
can you please take your seat?
But Chair.
No, Honorable
But
Maxon,
Chair, it is
take
unfair.
your seat.
It's unfair of what you are doing. You are allowing the minister to do
Honorable
as much what
Maxon, can
she
you
wants to
please
do.
take your seat?
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. A follow-up question to the Honourable Minister, noting firstly that the CFO was suspended and finally dismissed due to financial irregularities, including procurement ones. The DG and DDG were suspended and reinstated with final warning because of these irregularities. Thirdly, the Minister did not appraise the Portfolio Committee of Forensic Investigations findings and recommendations. Given that AXA raised concern about the leadership and its oversight role, and insufficient evidence of appropriate disciplinary action against officials responsible for irregular and fruitful and wasteful expenditure. And this is the issue of the consequence management, lack of internal audit and controls, and that's also noted in the impact. Then there's also the disclaimer audit opinion of financial year 2013-14 and the qualified audit for 14-15. And consequently, there was a late submission of the annual reports and QPRs for financial year 2014-15. The question I therefore put to the Honourable Minister, Honourable Speaker, is how many officials were actually implicated in irregular financial management? And what were the consequences, including criminal charges against these individuals, and why were they treated differently? Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Esau. Honorable Member, you're correct. You have a lot of information about what happened. You are correct too that initially this man was the whistleblower. However, when the investigation began, and I was not conducting the investigation, when he was called upon to come and testify about some of the issues which he had raised with the auditors, the man went AWOL. Okay? Now, the two people who had been implicated, who I had suspended, right, for purposes of conducting an investigation, indeed, they were investigated, indeed, they were questioned about everything, and precisely because the man had gone on AWOL,
there was no one therefore to provide evidence which could tie them down and perhaps even lead to whatever form of sanction. There was no such evidence. And indeed, afterwards, the case collapsed and they were taken back to work. So I'm just saying that the facts which you have, you are correct, he was the whistleblower, but when it was time for him to come forward to provide the information so that it could be used against those who were being investigated, he was then never available to do so and instead chose to go AWOL. Thank you very much, Honorable Member.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mwango, to follow-up question.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Arising from what the Minister has just said, I would like to know whether there has been any wider investigation conducted subsequent to these particular cases to ensure that no similar misdemeanors actually have happened and actually gone undetected. Thank you.
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mtwango. Honorable Mtwango, there hasn't been a wider investigation, but all I can say is that now that we identified some of the matters which were raised earlier on by Honorable Esau, we decided to bring in a turnaround team into the department, which turnaround team has various work streams. Amongst others is the cleaning up of the financials of the department, the cleaning up of the database, developing policy relevant to some of the child gaps which have been identified in the legislation. So you have various work streams which are doing different things within the department, but working together with the officials in the department. And I'm responding in this particular manner because of the things which have been raised by Honorable Esau, because indeed what led us to put together that team was because of some of the matters which have just been raised by the Honorable Member. Thank you, Honorable Mtwango.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The last supplementary question to the Minister is by Honorable Gamed. Honorable Gamed. Okay. What is it? Could you please assist us with the connections to the mic for Honorable Gamede?
Thanks, House Chair. Honorable Minister, appreciating your response. What has been the track record of the department in the past 2 financial years in dealing with corruption, using various anti-corruption legal instruments at its disposal? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kamete. Well, whenever we have received information relevant to a particular occurrence or mismanagement of finances, we have conducted investigations. Obviously, you rely on people who provide you with information and evidence in order for you to secure whatever form of sanction of conviction. And I should say that earlier on, the Honorable Member wanted to know whether, in fact, there have been any cases of criminal which have been taken to the courts for purposes of prosecutions. No, we haven't had that kind of case within that department in particular. But when there have been instances of irregularities, and when we have been informed about those, we have taken action by way of investigating those matters. Thank you, Honorable Gamet.
Thank you very much. Now we go to the next question, question number 476, asked by Honorable Mulebazi to the 478, asked by Honorable Mulebazi to the Minister of Police. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much,
Madam Chairperson. Indeed, we are making progress towards the activation of the Transformation Task Team in the South African Police Service. We have largely utilized the month of September and October for consultations, particularly with local experts, as well as some of our international partners to also assist us in the work that we'll be undertaking. So in the period of about 2 weeks from now, we'll be making public announcements insofar as the actual constitution of the Transformation Task Team and all other relevant details that are there associated with. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. We ask the Honorable Mulibadzi if there's follow-up question.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, on behalf of Honorable Mulibadzi. Honorable Minister, the program of the transformation of SAPS will require a number of structural changes within the SAPS. Of this will be the model of the leadership structure, technology, communications, and the structure of provincial commissioners, amongst others. How will these structural changes enhance achieving the objective of professional policing in the country? Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. In every change management program, it becomes imperative to look at 3 particular components of such an approach. Firstly is the question of your people and culture, and of course looking at systems that would have to enable such an institution to be able to move forward. So these are largely the components that we're looking at. And of course, we would also need to be dictated to by a standing principle when it comes to issues of change management. And that is the whole question of the extent to which you're able to deliver is then largely informed by the manner in which you are structured. And that's the approach that we're following. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. The second to ask the follow-up question is from Honorable Mbele.
Ngiyabonga, Sihlalo. Minister, you've shown commendable speed and seriousness in responding to the Farlam Commission reports by the plan for this transformation task team, as you have outlined. But speaking of commissions, we are yet to see the same approach with regard to the Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry reports. You hosted an imbizo in Khayelitsha 2 weeks ago, but we seem no closer to a concrete commitment from you to implement all recommendations of the Khayelitsha Commission reports. And as part of leading a turnaround in the SAPS to ensure a more rational allocation of resources, both financial and human, when will the Minister act on the specific recommendation for him to request the National Police Commissioner to appoint a task team to investigate the system of human resource allocation in the SAPS as a matter of urgency?
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Let me just indicate, Madam Chairperson, that I think the intervention by the Honorable Mbele has got to be split into 2. The one is the general point around the question of resource allocation within the South African Police Service, which in itself is a different matter altogether. But away from that is the question of what is commonly referred to as the Khayelitsha Commission. Now, the meeting we held with the community of Khayelitsha was, in the first instance, a report-back meeting about the work that is being undertaken and driven at that particular level, the work that essentially is driven by a team composed of the South African Police Service, led by Major General Brandt of the Khayelitsha police station, as well as the relevant leadership levels there, together with community leaders in Khayelitsha. So there's an existing task team that is continuously looking into issues of improving policing, for an example, in Khayelitsha. Now, and therefore I wouldn't understand the essence of your question about what it is that is being done, because I think that matter has been widely reported in terms of the work that is undertaken at that level. Now, with regards to the general point of resource allocation, indeed, it is a point that we ourselves in the South African Police Service have generally acknowledged, that wherever you go, just like you also is the situation in Khayelitsha, whether you go to Mangaung, you will find that largely the complaints that you find from members of the community, it's about the availability of policing resources. In the same way that if you move from Mangaung, you go to Emashabatin, for an example, that's exactly the same kind of a complaint that you'll find, which then tells you that what we effectively need to put an effort on is the question of reviewing our resource allocation guide, amongst other things, so that we begin to look at how, at best, we deal with the question of services to different communities. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next is Honorable Shaikh Imam.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Minister, transformation is one of the reasons for the low morale amongst SEPS members and one of the many factors contributing to the high crime rate, corruption, etc., Honorable Minister. When you released the crime stats to the Portfolio Committee, a recommendation or suggestion was made by the Portfolio Committee for a comprehensive brainstorming session including all relevant stakeholders to come together and deliberate on the serious challenges. Honorable Minister, you advised that you will consider this recommendation. Could you please advise if you still intend proceeding with this? Thank you. And when, Mr.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I think we have spoken at large around the issue of the challenges, and of course not narrowly in relation to the question of the crime stats, because we should remember that crime stats are effectively a reflection of what our society is like. So if you want to see the extent to which we are sick as a South African society, then we must delve into the actual detail around the question of crime stats and so on. Now, one of the critical features that we have identified that we are planning towards, and we're hoping that before the fall of the year, basically, we undertake this particular exercise, is the question of the prevalence of violence, the culture of violence generally amongst ourselves as South Africans, that we do need to interact on this or around this particular question and engage quite extensively. And associated with that is also the proliferation of firearms within our society, and so on, because they become a part of the activity generally of a violent practice and conduct amongst the South African citizenry. So we are working towards this particular specific recommendation that also arose out of the Portfolio Committee. As I said, that we do hope that before the fall of the year, we're able to basically mobilize all other stakeholders to then begin to undertake an engagement around this question. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Next and last is Honorable Mngango, IFFP.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairperson. Well, once the word transformation actually is mentioned in whatever the government attempts to do, it tends to raise the public interest. Will the minister make public the terms of reference so that the people do not have any misconceptions of what this transformation task team seeks to achieve? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
No, thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, and thanks, Honorable Mngwan. We will certainly do so. We'll remember that when we refer to the concept and the structure itself of the transformation task team, it arises out of a matter of public interest. It arises out of the Falam's Commission of Inquiry. So, in a sense, we're then responding to the recommendations that are contained in Judge Falam's report. And in essence, really, is that when we look into the recommendations themselves, they actually do mean that the manner of response has got to be this change management program, has got to be this transformation and so forth. So indeed, when we formally constitute the actual sort of teams around the issues of transformation, we'll make those announcements, but also the terms of reference, so they will also be made public. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. That was the last supplementary question to question 478. We now move to question 507, asked by Honorable Mwango to the Minister of Police. Honorable Minister.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson, honorable members. In 2010, the firearm losses, the figure stood at about 3,814, but we've seen a reduction between 2010 to the current period. We're now down to 743 firearm losses, and which accounts for about 81%. Now, this is attributed by the mere fact that we have had to put control measures in place, amongst which is the question of biannual and annual inspections, stock taking and certification of firearms, but also setting maximum stock levels depending on policing requirements at stations and units, the issuing of safes for personnel SAPS firearms, the issuing of pistol retention cords to prevent snatching and loss during active duty, issuing of dot, pinned, and IBIS fired firearms as part of their personal inventories in order to facilitate accountability thereof. This particular process also assists in the identification of firearms when they are found with their serial numbers filed off. Another measure is the tracking of firearms in the firearm register, which is commonly known as SAPS 457, as well as the occurrence book, commonly known as the SAPS 10. Competency and fitness of members are also ensured through different types of firearms courses during annual shooting practices, and emphasis is placed on handling of firearms, safeguarding and ensuring that members comply with the competency criteria as prescribed by legislation and departmental policy. Lastly, one of the measures is the parade inspections on daily basis by commanders on SAPS 15, which is basically a duty sheet. Part B of the honorable member's question, we would like to submit, Chairperson, that we are unfortunate to provide further details on this question, particularly given the time frame that has been given to us, particularly because the information is not readily available. We'll certainly need more time to consolidate. With us, would like to respectfully submit that we request a further extension in order for us to provide quality and correct information as soon as it is received. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Mngango.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I just hope that my question will actually remain on the order paper in the light of what the Minister has just said, so that a complete picture of and a complete response to my question is actually given. But arising from what the Minister has just said, Honorable Minister, the continued high prevalence of the use of police firearms in crime in and around South Africa shows no signs of abatement. This morning, I heard of another incident where SAPS firearms were used in a robbery in Cape Town. Are current departmental sanctions tough enough and enforced against police officers who are found to be negligent in their custody and safekeeping of firearms? I thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. Indeed, we have, I think in the beginning of my response, for instance, I alluded to the fact that if you look at figures in 2010, we had something like 3,800 in excess thereof of firearms that were lost, but we're now down to 743 now. And the decrease does not just simply come on its own, it's precisely because of the measures that we're putting in place, including, of course, issues of compliance. And once you talk of issues of compliance, therein is the question of accountability, disciplinary sort of measures and so forth. So we are making progress in that regard. Of course, you do have cases such as the one that you are referring to, but that in itself is part of the work that we also have got to intensify on our part to ensure that indeed we reach a stage where we do not have police firearms that are also part of the criminal activity in our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I call the next member, let me just say on what you just asked, Honorable Mwango, about your question remaining on the order paper. We must remind members that it is not possible because we know that outstanding questions you will receive replies will be printed on Hansard. Thank you very much. Now we call Honorable Mbele to continue with supplementary questions.
Ngiyabonga, Sihlalo. Minister, I want to acknowledge what you say about the downward trend in SAP's firearms being lost. That's good news. But every firearm that is lost by the SAPs is the closest we can get to the police literally shooting themselves in the foot. These lost firearms usually find their way into the hands of criminals who use them to rob, murder, and terrorize ordinary citizens in their homes, workplaces, and in the streets. And what makes this particularly problematic is that it's not that one firearm will translate into one crime or one crime scene. One firearm very often will be used multiple times against multiple victims in multiple crimes. So that is what makes this so bad. We need strong accountability measures to ensure that any carelessness and corruption that contributes to this problem is curbed. So, Minister, I want to ask a slightly more specific question than Honorable Mwango, which is what steps specifically has the department taken against those members of the SAPs who, according to information from your office, have lost 2,356 firearms in the past 3 financial years?
Thank you, Honorable Mbele. Let me remind even the other members that you only have 1 minute to state your supplementary question. So I allowed it because I want the minister to respond. Thank you. Continue, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Earlier on, I spoke to 2 broad elements of interventions. The first one is around the question of taking disciplinary steps where necessary, as and when we come across such cases, but also institutionally. There are these particular measures that we have had to make. One of them is the biannual and annual inspections, stock taking and certification of firearms, the setting of maximum stock levels, amongst others, the tracking of firearms, amongst other things. Those are some of the measures institutionally that we have had to institute to deal with the question of such losses. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. The next.
Point of order, Chairperson. Honorable Mbele, to your left.
Oh, okay.
Chairperson, I must respectfully submit that the minister has not answered my question. He repeated his opening statement about preventive measures.
Okay.
My question is, what are the sanctions applied to members who are found to have lost their firearms? So post the facts, not pre the facts.
Noted, Honorable Member. Can I now go to Honorable Mishwe, ACDP?
Sorry, with respect, House Chair, if I may. The ministers are accountable to Parliament, and while we certainly can't determine their answers, I think that the minister clearly misunderstood the question that was put to him, and perhaps he could be given the opportunity to answer and redeem himself and answer the question.
Honorable Steenhuisen, I think you know by the conventions of this House that if a member feels that the minister has not answered what she was expecting, I can force the minister to answer that, because I don't know the content of that, and we know it's a convention of this House that I cannot do that.
Madam House Chair, with respect, I think that would apply if the minister had answered the particular question. Obviously, you can't force him to answer a question in a particular way. But in this instance, I think it's different in that the minister's clearly misunderstood the question. There's two different time frames that we talk about: before the facts are found out and after the crime is detected. Honourable Mbele's question was directed at post-detection.
The Honorable Minister is standing on his feet. I don't know what that implies. Do you want to respond, Honorable Minister?
No, Madam Chairperson, I thought I would really want to assist in relation to this particular question, if you so permit.
I allow you.
Okay, no, thank you very much. The nature of disciplinary processes are such that you can't determine the outcome of such a process beforehand. Now, so if you ask me as to what kind of sanctions do we have in store for people that lose firearms and so on, each particular individual case is different from another in terms of, because we would have to determine issues such as negligence and the extent thereof, amongst other things, to arrive at a sanction. So the nature of disciplinary processes are such that you can't prescribe that should I find that Honorable Mbele has lost a firearm, this is the kind of a sentence that I would so impose. So that's the clarification on this question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't take this as the second supplementary question. It is still the same question. So I will still allow Honorable Mishwe, and the last one will be Honorable Mabija from the ANC. Honorable Mishwe.
Thank you, Chairperson. Minister, we welcome the news that there is a decline in the number of firearms that are being lost or stolen. In your reply, you said, where necessary, you take disciplinary measures against those who lost firearms. So now my question is, under what circumstances is it not necessary to take disciplinary steps against those who lost firearms? Because if they lose firearms, it means they were careless. Firearms that are lost are different from those that are stolen. Now we are talking about those that were lost. Under what circumstances is it not necessary to take disciplinary measures against those who lost them?
Honorable Minister.
Firstly, I do think that perhaps it's because I spoke in English, but nevertheless, I wasn't necessarily implying that taking steps is optional. I was not implying that by any means. I wasn't, but also the definition of loss. Loss is by, has got a broad definition. I mean, you can lose your firearm because it has been stolen. You can lose it because something else has been done and so forth. So the definition is broader than just what you alluded to. So I was not implying that at all, that it's optional to take disciplinary steps and so on. So if you understood me that way, I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. The last is Honorable Mabija.
Thanks, House Chair. I would like to request the Honorable Minister to furnish us with measures taken Can you hear what I'm saying?
Yes, I can.
I would like to furnish the Honorable, to request the Honorable Minister to furnish us with measures taken to ensure that the firearms registry and data capturing turn around to ensure better management of firearms by SAPS. Thank you.
Clear, Honorable Minister?
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members. We are making interventions. For starters, the Deputy Minister of Police conducted also a site visit to the Central Firearm Registry and compiled a report that also pointed out to a number of defects and deficiencies in the system. But also, honorable members will also be aware that there are also criminal cases that have also arisen out of the work that we have also started doing and conducting at the level of the Central Firearm Registry, involving some of our personnel as well, insofar as the issue of CFR. So we are continuing to make follow-ups on this particular issue and also interacting largely with the specific points that are pointed out by the report that the Deputy Minister of Police compiled. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was the last supplementary question to this question. We now move to question number 475, asked by Honorable Mabika, NFP, to the Minister of Police. Honorable Minister?
Madam Chairperson, the South African Police Service is aware of the crime tendencies in West Kamelele and Emanguzi area. Members have been deployed on detached duties to conduct operations and investigate relevant case dockets. The cluster commander has also initiated the intelligence-driven operations in the above-mentioned areas, which will be an ongoing feature. Currently, the South African National Defense Force is deployed along the borderlines of Mozambique and Swaziland. Specific focus has been given to motor vehicles crossing the borderline fence illegally. The South African Police Service is also performing operational duties within the 10-kilometer radius of the borderline together with the South African National Defense Force. The operational strategy is a multidisciplinary approach with the South African Police Service as well as the vehicle tracking companies. A WhatsApp chat group has been established whereby the South African National Defense Force is informed of hijacked and/or stolen vehicles making their way towards the borderline. And this has resulted in a number of vehicles being recovered. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mabika.
Ngiyabonga, House Chair. Indlela uMinister uphendula ngayo lo mbuzo ayinikeza ithemba futhi ayikhombisa ukuthi uMinister uthatha serious njengoba lesimo si crisis kuleya ndawo. Indaba yokuthi amaphoyisa akhona kuleya ndawo is not new. Namasotsha ahleze khona. Many years ago, Minister Charles Ngakula went there, and police and soldiers were deployed, but it has not improved. The families in that area are living in fear. It's happening every day. In KZN, it's like, it is like a joke, because you'll hear even from the radio stations being announced to say motor cars are taken from Tuba. When you pass that area, you must be careful. But I would have thought that Minister Uzoti, more than indaba yokuthumela kwalamaphoyisa akhona.
I think your question is very clear.
Okay, thank you.
Honorable Minister.
No, asibonga kakhulu mphathi hlalo ngalombuzo kamnumzane uMabika. Ebezama ukucacisa nje kuphela ukuthi singasizwa lesi simo njoba esichaza kungasho lokho ukuthi asisithathi njengesimo esibalekile empilweni zabantu bakithi mayelana nokuthi udama lokwebewa kwezimoto nobugebengu obenzakalayo okweqa imingcele ngendlela kokweqa ngayo izinto ngokungekho emthethweni akusho ukuthi lokho asikuboni siyakubona bakithi kodwa ke ngiwuzwile futhi umbuzo wakhe noma engawuqedelanga Nkosi kodwa othi ngaphezulu kuba khona kwamasosha namaphoyisa ikuphi okunye sikwenzayo bese sizamile ukuchaza ukuthi olunye uhlelo sesisebenzela phezulu kwalo olokufaka inhloli kuze kusizakale ukusebenza kwamaphoyisa so lo msebenzi esithi ke uqalile ukwenzeka ngaphezulu koba khona kwenombolo nje isibalo samaphoyisa kanye namasosha abhekelela isimo sokuthi sinqande lobuhlobo lobugebengu kuleya ndawo siyabonga hlala
Nongqoshe. Olandelayo umama uNkomo IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Minister, in respect of these stolen vehicles, especially in the areas of Skemelele and Manguzi areas, what is the current relationship? Because it's quite important for us to determine that between the SAPS, our border control police, as well as the police enforcement agencies in our neighboring countries. Is it a good working relationship? Because if it is, we would be seeing a decrease in these stolen cars. What could be further put in as an enhancement to the relationship so that we can shut down this thoroughfare of criminal trafficking, noting that it's also affecting tourism in the area? Thank you.
Mhlonishwa Nongqoshe.
No, thank you very much. There is an excellent and a working partnership between, first and foremost, the South African law enforcement agencies, but also between the law enforcement agencies that operate in that particular area with our counterparts across the borders, particularly insofar as the issues of organized crime, because the issue also of vehicle theft and being crossed over to the neighboring countries forms part of the organized crime activity. So indeed, there is that working relationship. And let me just also hasten to say that we will also continue to step up our efforts to try and stem this particular tide, indeed, at the level of coordinating our work between ourselves and the neighboring countries in ensuring that we reduce these particular levels of activity in that area. Thank you very much.
Siyabonga. Olandelayo Honorable Mbele.
Ngiyabonga sihlalo. Ukube bengazi bengizobuza umbuzo wami ngesizulu. Kodwa ngifuna ukuthi Nongqoshe, our crime intelligence division has long suffered underperformance because we know that they struggle to clamp down on syndicate crime and to preempt the activities of vehicle theft syndicates. This problem is further exacerbated by chronic under-resourcing and mismanagement of the border control environment, which makes our borders effectively porous and makes it too easy for stolen vehicles to be taken across the border. Now, while some of these vehicles are found before they are taken across and there's cross-border cooperation with Mozambican police, more needs to be done. Minister, do you have up-to-date information on the status of crime intelligence and border control capacity, and what is being done to improve this so we can undercut these syndicates and better secure our borders?
Thank you, Honorable Mbele. On slier dital te gebruik. Moenie worry nie. Nongqoshe.
No, thanks very much. Indeed, I do not have, as we speak, an up-to-date sort of figures and everything else as you would want to suggest. And in fact, I would suggest that you certainly need to consider filing another question in relation to this particular matter. So I will not be able to, right here and now, provide you with an up-to-date kind of status insofar as that question is concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next to ask the Supplementary question is Honorable Shaikh Imam.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, I have a slightly different perspective to stolen vehicles. My opinion is that most vehicles that are leaving and going to the borders through to the other countries are not stolen at the time when they are going through. This is mainly as a result of insurance fraud, where vehicles go across and people only report them 1 month later. Could you please tell us if there is a mechanism between when you leave the borders, where you make an entry, and when the cases are reported at police stations 1 month later, to be able to identify this particular vehicle could have left and gone through the border a month ago, which was not reported at that stage? And the second thing, when the Minister, is the only reason vehicles are getting stolen because there's a market for it. So if you can tell us what mechanism you intend putting in place, because these motor vehicle scrapyards are a cause of this as well. So if you can tell us what you intend doing together with the motor vehicle scrapyards, together with policing, to try and overcome that challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. Ngqongqoshe Hlonishwa.
No, I think we should remember that, for instance, when a motor vehicle is stolen, it's reported at the police station and you have a case number and all other processes then thereafter follow. And of course, all tracking mechanisms would then have got to take place. Now, the question of, I'm trying to figure out, for instance, was you seem to be suggesting that there is also the question of an insurance fraud scams and so on that also are part of this particular activity. Now, ours is not about the question of insurance. It's about, yes, you said to us that you have lost your car, it has been stolen. And ours is to then assist looking up for that particular vehicle and so forth. Whether we discover it 2 days later or a month later and so on, the fact is that we'd have recovered and discovered the car if we are so successful, and therefore deal with the matter from that point of view. I think it's a different matter altogether to then look into the deeper analysis of some of the other contributing factors, because if insurance scams, for instance, is also part of the contributing factors, then you would require a different analysis for such. I should so think. Go to Bhutan, Westby.
Honorable Member, you are asked, do you want to repeat your second part of the question to assist the Minister before we continue? Honorable Imam?
Yeah, Honorable Minister, what I was actually saying is, these vehicles that leave South Africa to other countries, at the time of leaving, they are not stolen. They are not stolen vehicles. And that's why they're so easily able to leave and go through. Now, the borders cannot do anything about it because you have the registration papers and the vehicles are leaving and going. But 1 month later, that very owner goes and says, my car was stolen, and now claims insurance. And you will then follow the normal process. I want to know, is there a process to check back with the border control whether this vehicle had indeed left South African borders a month ago? Because that is most of the instances of cases of cars going across, because cars that have value are only going for insurance purposes.
Understood. I think it's clear now. Ngqongqoshe ungaqhubeka umphendule.
Oh yeah, no, but I think I responded to that question, and that's what I dealt with. The part that I had not remembered at the time was the question of scrap yards, and so it goes. Now, I'm failing to find a relationship between the existence of a scrap yard and cars being taken across the border, for an example. However, I think the valid part of your intervention is that there is a need for us to get much more closer and study closely the question of the scrap metal industry, for an example. There have been a number of serious concerns that have been raised. So indeed, we had at some point, for an example, had have been saying to representatives of business that we do need to have a serious discussion around the question of how do we deal with the scrap metal industry in this country and the manner in which it also, I shouldn't say that I nearly said the wrong thing, but nevertheless.
The time?
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
Siyathokoza. Sirakela phambili kwanje sizoku Buza-
Chairperson,
Honorable Mabika.
yeah, Chairperson, I need to put it on record to say the minister only responded on the part of the stolen vehicles, but did not touch on the issue that pertains to the shops that are broken into, because
Okay.
he is aware of the issue of the mini police station that has long been discussed around Skemelele area. So I would have thought that he was gonna address that one as well.
Okay, Honorable Mabika, let me just remind you again. If you feel that part of your question was not answered, akusikala. Osingakwenza nje politically, you know how to follow it up for that question to be answered. But kwamanje angeke ngithi abuyele lapho ayiphendule. Ngiyaxolisa. Bengisathi sirangela phambili siya kumbuzo 479 obuzwe ngumhlonishwa uBhongo kuNgqongqoshe we-Justice and Correctional Services. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson, for the question. The transformation of the criminal justice system into a modernized, effective criminal justice system through integrated interventions is continuing to ensure that we deliver quality and professional services in an integrated, coordinated, effective, and efficient criminal justice system. A main element of the transformation of the CJS is dealing with the development and provision of integrated systems to facilitate integration across the value chain of the CJS. This includes the provision of an integrated and seamless national CJS information system to facilitate more informed strategies. More informed strategies and plans, decision-making, as well as to facilitate better day-to-day operational management. It also relates to the provision of integrated technology solutions aimed at modernizing operations, reducing costs, and eliminating waste. Some of the challenges that remain a focal point, however, and therefore need attention for the justice, crime prevention, and security cluster are the following. The Department of Justice and Constitutional Development is experiencing difficulties to implement the network upgrade at identified courts for IJS solutions due to State Information Technology Agency processes. The IJS transversal migration has been delayed for more than a year. This entails moving of physical information technology, that is IT infrastructure, from SAPS to the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. South African Police Services is experiencing delays in delivering the person architecture, the development of a unique person-identified capability, as well as integrated bookings. This has led to the delays in delivering person tracking and modernization. And that is at SAPS. Due to a lack of funding, the Department of Social Development cannot upgrade the virtual private network that will allow the department to set up an integration endpoint. This is also impacting on the ability of DSD to electronically exchange information with other participating departments through the integrated justice system. The Department of Correctional Services is experiencing delays in the development of the integration endpoint as well as the integrated inmate management system. Data integrity challenges affect the delivery of key performance indicators relating to DSD data for the business intelligence solutions, etc.
Thank you. Mhlonishwa Bongo.
Sithokoze. Honorable Minister, thank you for the elaborate response. Given these challenges outlined, what practically will an integrated criminal justice system mean to an ordinary citizen who requires access and assistance from the criminal justice system? And when will this be likely to be completed? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
I must concede that the targeted time frame within which to effectively implement the system fully continues to be a challenge. And as I've indicated, we have already exceeded a year at this stage because of the challenges that I've outlined. So at this stage, I'm not in a position to give an exact time frame, as the different aspects do not depend entirely on one single role player, but it is a multiplicity of players with unique challenges that continue to bedevil the exact date at which we hope to be fully ready to implement.
Thank you. We now ask Honorable Hon to ask his supplementary question.
Thank you, Chairperson. Minister, last year you answered to a written question I asked you that up till then, from 1998, 2.3 billion has been spent to develop this system. Yet in August this year, when the Portfolio Committee was briefed, we were informed that up to now, only four cases have been able to be handled through the integrated criminal justice system from start to finish. That roughly, if you take into account the budgetary provision of this year, works out to 600 million rand per case. Yet you talk of the development of a seamless system and timeframes being a challenge. Minister, will this ever be finished, and has anybody felt the consequences of non-achievement in the development of this system?
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
I will indeed concede that it has taken quite a length of time to accomplish the full operationalization of this system, which is unfortunate. Unfortunately, the various factors that I've alluded to and others which time did not allow me to continue to bedevil our effort to bring the system online. I must just indicate that the honorable member would be asked to be honest enough to put matters in proper context. If you take, for purposes of demonstration, a selection of cases to demonstrate how effective the system would be able to facilitate the management of cases in an integrated manner, that could not be put out of context as suggesting that there's only 4 cases, that an entire system at that cost would be dedicated to handle. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable Mente.
I will take it for Honorable Mente.
May I establish if Honorable Mente is in the house?
She's not in the house.
But why do you do that, honorable members? Okay, continue. Let's refrain from doing that. Continue.
Okay, thank you. When is the minister going to establish magistrate courts per municipalities for practical integration of criminal justice to make justice system a social function accessible by all. Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Although it's a different question, I'll nonetheless respond because the issue indeed is important enough. Just to remind the honorable member that on the 1st of December 2014, we launched a project to rationalize the magisterial districts throughout the country, commencing in 2 provinces, namely Gauteng and Northwest, with plans to roll out that program throughout the country, precisely in order to achieve the objective that the honorable member has alluded to, namely to realign the boundaries of our district courts with the geographical boundaries in terms of our current constitutional dispensation. Equally, the same is being done in ensuring that the geographical boundaries of our high courts are also aligned to the provincial boundaries as outlined in our constitution. This is so as to ensure consistency in the manner in which government is organized across different sectors, and that would include the justice system as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Wokugcina kuzoba umhlonishwa Msimang, IFP.
Honorable House Chair, I would like to know from the Honorable Minister whether this integration will also include principles of African traditional, customary criminal law. The reason I am asking this is that traditional leadership and traditional customary law are enshrined in our constitution, and customary law is widely used by our people, especially in the rural areas. Thank you.
Mhlonishwa Ngqongqoshe.
I can see the honorable member's passion with regard to customary law issues, which is not misplaced. Indeed, as the department, we take the constitutional injunction of ensuring that in as much as legislation and common law are given full expression in our legal system and in our jurisprudence, so is African indigenous law, which is often referred to as customary law. And to this end, and members of the Portfolio Committee would recall in a recent engagement that we talked extensively about the need to explore ways of ensuring integration of African indigenous value systems under indigenous law into the mainstream of our jurisprudence, because our reading of the Constitution is that there is no express relegation of that system to only those who historically have adhered to and lived according to that system. Hence, for example, the Constitutional Court embraced the notion of Ubuntu in some of its judgments, which is a notion that is borrowed from indigenous law. We think there's a lot more that indigenous law can contribute in the development of our jurisprudence generally, and that should include ensuring that the pending development of a legal framework for the integration of traditional court tribunals into our mainstream, into the mainstream justice system is also expedited. Thank you.
Sithokoze. Siyaraka siyaphambili. Siya kumbuzo 480 obuzwe ngumhlonishwa Mpumlwana abuza uMinister of Justice and Correctional Service. Honorable Minister.
Thank you once again, Chairperson. I wish to inform the honorable member that government is committed to implement measures aimed at continued reform of the justice system to protect and promote the rights of victims. Government adopted the Service Charter for Victims of Crime in 2004, and the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security Cluster approved the Restorative Justice Policy in 2011. We have expanded the Tutuzela care centers to 55 sites where victims of sexual offenses are assisted in one-stop center settings with a victim-friendly environment for the prosecutor-guided investigations with a view to reduce the cycle period in the finalization of cases and to reduce the secondary victimization that often occurs. It is noteworthy that 65% of the matters that goes to the Tutuzela care centers are rape cases. The National Prosecuting Authority has also appointed court preparation officers at the courts to explain to the victims and witnesses the court procedure, the waiting areas for consultations, etc. 185 court intermediaries have been appointed to the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development to assist children and, in some instances, other vulnerable witnesses that must testify in court. The appointment of more intermediaries will continue within the budgetary constraints. The core objective of restorative justice programs in the criminal justice system is to ensure that offenders receive the opportunity to realize, appreciate, and repent of the harm that they have caused, apologize to the victim if the victim agrees, his or her family and or the community at large, and as far as possible, restore the balance of justice that was disturbed when the crime was committed. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mpumlwana, before you come in, honorable members, let me not recognize your voice. You can converse, but please, I can hear some of the conversations you are making from where I am sitting. It's not right. Honorable Mpumlwana?
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your comprehensive reply to my question. I just wanted to clarification on your plans. According to African system of justice, with a view to make peace and reparation, may I respectfully request your opinion with regard to introducing restorative justice as early as possible, before or after, as soon as the offender is convicted by a court of law?
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
I may as well add a chairperson in response to the follow-up question from the honorable member, that my view is that restorative justice can actually be applied even prior to the formal criminal justice process is initiated through diversion measures, for example, where an effort is made to reconcile the offender and the perpetrator and actually to resolve matters outside of the formal judicial process, especially when it relates to minor offenses. But nonetheless, to concur with the honorable member that indeed there is value in adopting the indigenous value systems that could assist in resolving some of the difficulties associated with social conflict associated with the commission of crime, using the more, the less punitive and rather more reconciliatory interventions that indigenous systems offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Hon, next to ask.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, it's good to hear that you profess to be in favor of restorative justice, yet under your watch, the budgetary allocation for social reintegration from where restorative justice is funded has remained at a lowly 4%. Coupled with the fact that the unfilled positions for social workers who must facilitate this is in excess constantly of 20%. Why must we not conclude that the talk about restorative justice is just to say that we are having it and not to make a difference in the lives of either offenders or those who have been targeted by crime?
Hlonishwa, Ngqongqoshe.
Thank you for that fair criticism. I would be the first to concede that indeed the current structure of our budget does not quite reflect fully the policy thrust that we have adopted as government of bringing the victim, for example, at the center of the criminal justice system, of ensuring that rehabilitation and other corrective interventions are given greater emphasis in the manner in which we respond to offending behavior in the country. However, I can assure the honorable member that we are looking into the issue of gradual shift in this regard to ensure that, for example, we have recently appointed some 65 persons who would deal specifically with the tracing of victims, since there hasn't been, up to this far, a special office that deals with that specific responsibility, even though it is a critical focal point in our, for example, parole system. The emphasis that we want to put going forward in policy is to ensure that social reintegration measures, victim participation and victim empowerment are amongst the areas that receive greater focus, not only in corrections, but as well as in the entire value chain of the criminal justice system. I thank you.
Thank you. Mhlomphehi Paulson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can the Minister tell us why, if this is such an important role, that not every centre around the country has adequate facilities to perform this function? And also, what plans are afoot to make sure that we do have these facilities at every centre in the country? Thank you very much.
Ra leboga. Mhlomphehi.
I have taken it upon myself to visit the various regions in the country, both of the Department of Justice as well as of Corrections, and had interaction region per region, and with centers that I was able to visit in the course to actually emphasize the need for both facilities as well as area and area management, management areas as well as regions to redirect their focus in line with the prescripts and the current policy that is articulated in our white paper and other policy documents of ensuring that there is this gradual shift in the allocation of resources. We have challenges of personnel and vacancies that need to be addressed. Hence, for example, recently I gave instructions that about 3,000 vacancies that were there be filled as a matter of urgency. And of course, the downside of it is that we ended up with about 1 million applications that were quite a challenge to manage. So we're doing everything in our power to ensure that we capacitate the system nationally to ensure that it is able to respond fully to these obligations which we concede are articulated in our prescripts and in our policies. I thank you.
Ra leboga. Putshiso ya mafelelo ya go matlaleletšo e tla tla ka Mohlomphegi Msimang.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I'd like to know from the Honorable Minister whether this care and mediation includes financial reparation. And if it does, what happens in a case where the offender is a man of straw? What other recourse does the victim have? Thank you.
Hlonishwa Ngqongqoshe.
In terms of our law, if a person has committed an offense, that the prosecution against that person does not exclude the possibility of a victim bringing civil action for recovery of damages that resulted from that offense. In fact, in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act, provision is made for prosecutors to assist victims in recovering damages that may have resulted from the offense itself as matters stand. The full utilization of those provisions and their application is often bedeviled, one, by lack of knowledge of these rights by victims of crime, two, prosecutors sometimes not actually seizing the opportunity to come to the avail of victims in this manner. We are looking at evaluating our entire criminal justice value chain to ask the question to what extent, in the light of all the policies I alluded to earlier in my main reply, that seek to address the situation of the victim, what else we can still do to ensure that more attention is given to the plight of the victim of crime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the responses to this question. We now move on to question number 495, asked by Honorable Mbele to the Minister of Police. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, honorable members. IPD, in accordance with its legislative mandate, is in the process of conducting investigations, but also IPD is in a special project of sorts with the National Director of Public Prosecutions in following up around the specific matters raised by the Farnham Commission of Inquiry. We are of the view that the processes would have to be allowed to take their, their due course without undue influences and so on. Now, one part of the due processes is that IPID must also do a reconstruction of the scene as part of the investigations. Then on the basis of such, the collaboration between IPID and the National Director of Public Prosecutions would have to zoom into the specifics of the issues as raised by Honorable Judge Farnham. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Honorable, thank you, Minister. Honorable Mbele.
Ngiyabonga, Sihlalo. So with regard to the Farnham Commission's report, Minister, and its determination that the Commission was unable to make a conclusive, adverse, or favorable finding in relation to Minister Nathi Mthethwe's involvement in the events at Marikana, and thus the Cabinet's related culpability, have you, as the current Minister of Police, engaged the President as to further investigative steps to be taken to fully assess Minister Mthethwe's involvement in the event at Marikana? And if you have not done so yet, will you do so in the near future? And if not, why not?
Honorable Minister.
Madam Chairperson, that's a different question altogether. And I would suggest that if that's the question that you want to pursue, you will then need to follow the normal processes and so on in pursuing that particular question. The question that was posed by Honorable Mbele is what progress has been made in implementing the recommendations made by the Falam Commission of Inquiry, recommendations made by the Falam Commission of Inquiry with regard to members of the South African Police Service who were deployed in Marikana on the 16th of August 2020. That's the question. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can we get a follow-up to that question? Riedel, Honorable Riedeling Hayes. I'm sorry for pronouncing your name wrongly, sir.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Minister, staying on the subject of the recommendations of the report made a number of recommendations regarding the policing of protests. Given the increased frequency of protests across the country, most notably the Fees Must Fall protest here at Parliament, at the ANC's Luthuli House and the Union buildings, it is imperative that public order policing is adequately trained, equipped and resourced to diffuse and not inflame protests. Minister, what is the police doing in terms of training, capacitation and resourcing to ensure that disproportionate violent retaliation against protesters is avoided? And specifically, has the panel to review public order policing and analyze international best practice as recommended been established? If not, when do you intend to establish this panel? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Madam Chairperson, we made the public announcements in regard to the panel, for an example, as part of a clearly pointed out recommendation from the Falam Commission of Inquiry. Earlier on in this very same session, I also alluded to the fact that in the next 2 weeks, in the coming 2 weeks, sorry, we will we'll be making public announcements about the whole question of the effective constitution of the panel, as well as the transformation task team that we had spoken about earlier on. And indeed, we should also be taken into account that since the beginning of, since 2013, effectively December 2013, the question of the public order policing has been a matter that has been receiving attention on the side of the South African Police Service, both in terms of numbers, in terms of capacitation, but also issues of training, as well as issues of equipment and so forth. Now, taking forward the recommendations by the Falam Commission of Inquiry, the panel of experts is going to assist us because we need to study and interact with the broad spectrum of issues around issues of crowd management and public order policing, for an example, and looking at ways and means of how best do we then equip ourselves to deal with issues of public order policing in the South African context. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Minister. We now have Honorable Mngwango.
Ngiyabonga mphathi sihlalo. Ngicela ukusho ngqongqoshe ukuthi noma ngasasukumi nalutho, kodwa ke ngiyafisa ukwazi ukuthi mayelana nalaba lamaphoyisa athinteke eMarikana ngabe nawo unalo uhlelo lokuthi nxa seqeqeshwa bonke laba bakwi public order policing naba beyingxenye yalokho na.
Honorable Minister.
Asithi nje siyabonga kakhulu mphathi sihlalo, sibonga kakhulu nakuyilungu elihloniphekile ubaba uMncwane. Kulombuzo obekayo asithi nje uma usesiphoyiseni kubalekile ukuthi sifunde izindlela nezinhlelo ezintsha zokwazi ubhekana nesimo sobuphoyisa ikakhulukazi eyintweni ezithinta impikisho yomphakathi. Noma ke wawukhona eMarikana noma ungekho eMarikana, bonke labo bantu bangena edibhini kanye kanye. Sifuna sibabuke labo bantu ukuthi ndlelani particularly ngoba uhlelo lwethu lolu lophiko le-public order policing yona platform esifuna sikwazi ukuyisebenzisa mayelana nokubuka indlela ezintsha zokuthuthukisa indlela yokuphoyisa nokuqapha izimo zomphakathi. Siyabonga kakhulu mphathi sihlalo.
Siyabonga Ngqongqoshe. Isikhathi ke semibuzo sesifikelele ekupheleni. Izimpendulo esizitholile zizawubhalwa zishicilelwe kwi-Hansard. The time allocated for questions rather has expired. Outstanding replies received will be printed in Hansard. We now move to the notices of motion. Does any member wish to give notice of a motion? Thank you very much. No member has a motion. I think the heat is really not doing well for all of us. I've asked the questions and all members were like, so we pass. We go to the, okay, honorable members. Honorable member of the ANC.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates building the National School of Governance. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Member Kasia. Oh, member of the DA.
Voorzitter, ek gee hiermee namens die Demokratiese Alliansie kennis dat hierdie huis tydens die volgende sitting die gebruik van die uiterste slegte grondpad tussen Springbok en Gamhoek vir die vervoer van radioaktiewe afvalmateriaal na Vaalpits en die gevaar wat dit inhou indien 'n ongeluk sou plaasvind, debatteer.
Dankie. Honorable member of the EFF.
Thank you, Chair. I rise on behalf of the EFF to move that in its next sitting, the House debates need for legislation that prescribes that minimum of 51% of all JSE companies should be owned and controlled by workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable member of the ANC.
Chair, I move on the behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates vetting and lifestyle audit of senior government officials. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable member of the DA.
Honorable Chair, I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates the total collapse of the Tabazimbi municipality in Limpopo.
Thank you. Honorable member of the EFF.
Thank you, Chair. I rise on behalf of the EFF to move that in its next sitting, the House debates the imposition of education tax on all corporate companies to fund free quality education. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable member of the ANC.
I move on behalf of the ANC that at its next sitting, this House debates the important role that South Africa is playing in supporting the strengthening of public services in post-conflict countries in the African continent. I so move. Thanks.
Thank you. Honorable Waters.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates a surge in violent crime that is spiraling out of control in Kempton Park and urgent solutions to combat the scourge. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable member of the ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates intensifying training of councillors as well as constant evaluation on their progress. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable member of the EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the EFF to move that in its next sitting, the House debates the across-the-board implementation of the principle of equal work for equal pay for all workers, irrespective of race, class, and background. I so move.
Thank you. Honorable member of the ANC. Okay. Honorable member at the back there, the ANC. Yes, sir.
I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates constant oversight, to construction companies building houses to avoid poor workmanship. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Hlengwa.
Ngiyathokoza, Sihlalo. I move on behalf of the IFP that at its next sitting, the House debates the need to ensure that national and provincial government departments and major business corporations settle their debts due to municipalities, which is now more than 6 billion rands. I so move.
Thank you. Honorable member of the EFF at the back.
I rise on behalf of the EFF that in its next sitting, the House debates the development of a concrete social and labor development model, which will ensure that communities around the mines are developed out of proceeds of mining. I think.
Thank you. Are there any members wishing to give notice of motion? Yes, honorable member at the back.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the African National Congress that in its next sitting, the House debates Legal Aid South Africa, which was a recipient of 2 awards on unqualified audit opinion with no findings, 2014-2015 financial year. This was the Legal Aid South Africa's 14th conservative unqualified audit opinion and the 3rd Clean Audit Award for the from the Office of the Auditor General since its inception. Also of importance is that Legal Aid South Africa spent 98.1% of its budget allocation for the financial year. We want Treasury to put more money for this institution. I thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Let's remember that this is not yet the time for statements, but rather notices of motion. Are there any members wishing to give a notice of motion?
Could I request through your office that the table staff check whether that was actually compliant as a notice of motion?
That is why I am reminding members, Honorable Chair, indeed we will check, but I was just reminding in case some of us might have forgotten. Are there any members still wishing to give a notice of motion? There being none, we now move to motions without notice. NFP, EFF, DA.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. On behalf of the National Freedom Party, I move without notice that this Honorable House notes that on Sunday, the 17th of October 2015, 4 people were attacked by a gang of 12 men in Rhodes Park in Kensington, Johannesburg, and also notes that 2 of the victims, who were males, were stripped naked, had their hands and feet bound, and were thrown into a dam in the park where they drowned in full view of their helpless female companions. And further notes that one of the 2 females was repeatedly and brutally raped by the group of attackers, whilst the other woman managed to escape and ran away. Further notes that to date no arrests have been made in connection with this barbaric act. Wherefore we call upon this Honorable House to extend its condolences to the grieving families of the 2 men who died and wish the rape victim a speedy recovery from her ordeal, and call upon the South African Police Services to leave no stone unturned in bringing these perpetrators of this heinous crime to face justice. I so move.
Thank you. If there are no objections, I put the motion.
The EFF objects.
Objections noted. EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. I rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters to move without notice that the House notes that ideological clarity and resolve of higher education students who shook the establishment by demanding free quality university education and an end to the practice of outsourcing workers. Further notes that over the years, thousands of students, predominantly black, have been kicked out of universities simply because they cannot afford higher education. Thousands more have their results and certificates withheld by the universities, preventing them from applying and getting jobs. Acknowledges that currently, students from the top 8 universities in the country owe over 711 million on tuition fees and loans, and many of these students will have their results withheld and will not be able to register again next year. Further acknowledge that the frustration of students is as a result of years of neglect by the ANC government, particularly the communist Blade Nzimande in charge of higher education in this country. Notes the shameless opportunism of the ANC who, under the instruction of Gwede Mantashe, hijacked the revolutionary potential that the Fees Must Fall movement had by printing ANC t-shirts written "Fees Must Fall" for the march to the Union buildings. We further note that the ANC thinks South Africans are stupid by marching against the anti-poor and anti-free education position of their own government. The ANC thought South Africans will forget that we are in this crisis as a result of the ANC itself. We call on the student to refuse to be misled by Chalant, who appears to be sympathetic to the cause of free education, but who preside over an economically precise regime that excludes poor students from universities. Further calls on the student not to be sidetracked by those amongst them who have unquestioning loyalty to the African National Congress and who, as a result, would seek to stop students from seeing their revolution to the necessary conclusion. We emphasize that the no-fee increment agreed upon by President Zuma and all heads of universities is not free education. Many students will still be excluded next year because they will not have money required. We condemn President Zuma for inciting the violence that ensued at the march to the Union building by refusing to address the 1,000 students who had assembled at the Union building. We further condemn Minister Nzimande for not taking the plight of the poor students seriously and even joking about it and saying that he will lead a march with the hashtag "Students Must Fall." We congratulate, as the economic freedom fighters, all the students who have been part of this march and encourages them to continue until free education is attained. I so move.
Thank you. If there are no objections, I put the motion. Yes, honourable
ANC
member.
objects.
Objections noted. The DA. Order. Honourable members, can we allow another member to read his motion?
Thank you, Honourable
member.
Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that this House notes that on the 15th and the 16th of October, it was exactly 30 years ago after the Trojan Horse Massacre of 1985. Also notes that the incident rocked the South African community at large when anti-apartheid protests ripped through the parts of Athlone in the Western Cape. Recalls how the police loaded a South African railway truck with crates close to the edges, leaving the middle unloaded to create space for the police to hide. Further recalls that armed police hiding behind the crates sprang up and opened fire, killing 3 young people from the Cape Flats. Remember Jonathan Klaasen, age 21, Sean Mahmoud, age 15, and Michael Miranda, age 11, and send our heartfelt sympathies to their families as we honor their memory. I so move.
Thank you. If there are no objections, I put the motion.
Speaker, we can't have the party of P.W. Botha come
Are
grandstand
you
here.
objecting, honourable
I
member?
object.
Thank you.
Point of order.
Thank
I would suggest that the Honourable Paulser pays his maintenance before he comes and lectures other
Order,
people.
honourable
about-
member. Order. 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 Honourable members, can I address?
Madam Chair.
Can you please take a seat? Can you please take a seat? Order. Order. Honourable Matthias, can you take your seat? Order, honourable members. Honourable members. Honourable members. May I ask us to respect this House? Can I ask all of us to respect the proceedings we're undertaking? And I don't think a wrong corrects another wrong. Can we please proceed? IFP?
Madam Chair.
Order.
That
Madam
remark.
Honorable
Can you
Paulson.
rule?
Honorable
Can you
Paulson.
rule that punching bag withdraws that remark?
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chairperson.
It's a fucking lie.
Honorable member of the IFP.
Chairperson, I beg your pardon.
May I address you on a point of order?
Honorable member, there is a member behind you from your party on the point of order too. Yes, honorable member, what's the point of order?
Chairperson, the point is that people are starting to use the F word in this House, and really that is just unacceptable.
Order, honorable members. Yesterday in this very House, we were reminded that points of orders about procedural matters, not points of debate. Can we please stick to that rule? May I now recognize honorable member Kalyan?
On a point of order, Honourable Paulson used unparliamentary language, and I'd like to ask him to withdraw that.
May you please take a seat? Honorable Paulson, which word was it used? Which word was used?
If she's saying I use the unparliamentary word, then she must tell me what word.
Honorable Paulson, I have not recognized you yet. Honorable member, can you please?
It was quite audible. I'm not going to repeat it, but it starts with the F.
Okay. Honorable Paulson, did you use the word as alleged?
Chairperson, I objected to the lies that fat podgy man, that white podgy punching bag there. Okay, you're not giving me a chance.
Honorable Paulson.
No.
Honorable Paulson, all what I asked was whether you used the word as it is alleged, not to explain to me what you're doing. All what I just want to know.
Chairperson, I objected and I didn't use anything unparliamentary.
please-
There she must tell me what it is.
Order. Honorable member Paulson, can you take your seat? Can you take your seat?
Shut up. Chairperson.
Take your seat. Can you please take your seat? Honorable members, I will ask the NA table to look at this matter. Obviously, seated where I'm sitting, I could not hear what was said, and there are members who claim they did hear. The honorable member has been asked. He said he did not use the word, so we will follow up and check on Hansard if it did pick up anything. Can we now move to honorable member of the IFP, Van der Merwe?
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chairperson. On behalf of the IFP, I hereby move without notice that this House notes that South Africa commemorates National Disability Rights Awareness Month annually between 3 November and 3 December. Further notes that 3 December is the International Day of Persons with Disabilities and is also commemorated as National Disability Rights Awareness Day. Acknowledges that many South African citizens still suffer numerous injustices due to their physical or other disabilities. Further acknowledges that the objectives of this Awareness Month include increasing awareness of the rights of persons with disabilities to accelerate equal access to socioeconomic and other opportunities, and finally calls upon all South Africans and this House and all relevant stakeholders to make these objectives obtainable. I so move.
Thank you. If there are no objections, I put the motion.
The EFF objects.
Objections noted. The ANC.
The ANC moves without notice that the House notes that on Tuesday, 29 September 2015, it's on. Notes that on Tuesday, 29 September 2015, DJ Black Coffee, whose real name is Nkosinathi Mapumulo, won International DJ of the Year Award at the 18th Annual DJ Awards in Ibiza. Further notes that this prize, Best Breakthrough DJ Award, was followed by another prize, the Dance of the Year Award, to make 2 prizes by the South African DJ at the same awards. Acknowledges that these coveted music awards where 10 DJ categories are presented are crucial and are considered by many as the Oscars of the DJ industry. Recalls that in a bid to get South Africa dancing to his tunes, DJ Black Coffee challenged celebrities to a dance which quickly became popular on social media. Acknowledges that Black Coffee recently released his new album, Pieces of Me, which has topped the chart along the way, and congratulate DJ Black Coffee on raising the South African flag high in music industry. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion.
EFF objects.
Objections noted. Are there any further motions without notice? Honorable Member, and followed by the UDM and followed by the ANC.
House Chair, I rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters to move without notice that the House notes that yesterday economic freedom fighters led a historical economic freedom march, painting the street of Johannesburg red, shutting down on Sandton to deliver memorandums to the Chamber of Mines, South African Reserve Bank, and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange to demand changes that will see radical economic transformation necessary for equitable redistribution of much-needed benefits of South Africa's natural wealth. To note that when the Economic Freedom March started at Mary Fitzgerald Square in Newton at 10 o'clock, and at that time, the Johannesburg Metro Police Department estimated just under 10,000 people to join the march. To note that by the time the Commander-in-Chief, Julius Malema, handed a second memorandum of demands to the South African Reserve Bank, the JMPD estimated numbers to have swelled to just under 15,000 in attendance of the Economic Freedom March. Further to note that when the Economic Freedom March approached Oxford Road, the number of fighters marching towards JSE, led by the Commander-in-Chief, having walked for more than 13 kilometers, were estimated at 35,000 people in attendance. In the march, by the time the memorandum was handed to JSE at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, JMPD confirmed that the Economic Freedom March was attended by more than 50,000 people. Who many walked for more than 27 kilometers. To demand nationalization of mines, state-owned bank, the ban of labor brokers, 12,500 minimum wage for all mine workers, 4,500 national minimum wage, use of local service providers for all companies listed in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, procurement of local goods, local beneficiation, private sector contribution to education and vocational training, and other financial sector-related matters. Acknowledge that all young, old, unemployed, oppressed, and economically excluded black people who are
honorable members.
Who are saying that they are tired of living like slaves, and it is time they start living like human beings, like all on this side, perhaps also on that side, by going to the source of the problem as the government of the ANC has failed our people. Call on all the recipients of the memorandum of demands to take these memorandums seriously and swiftly move to address all outlined demands as soon as possible within the given timelines, failing which will shut the whole of Johannesburg. Further call on the broader private sector to work with the Chamber of Mines, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and the South African Reserve Bank to ensure that the Economic Freedom March demands are met unconditional. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion.
ANC object.
Thank you. The UDM?
Chairperson.
Yes, sir.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Chairperson, while the Honorable Matthias was delivering his motion...
Order.
While he was delivering his motion, the actor president over there, she said that the 50,000 marchers were on Niobe. Now, I want her to withdraw insulting people in this country. Like that.
Order.
She said they were on Niobe. That excuse of a member of parliament.
Sorry,
just
what
said
do you say she said?
She said those marchers were on Niobe.
Can you take your seat? Thank you, Honorable Member. Order, Honorable Members. Honorable Shabangu, did you say what has been alleged?
Chairperson, I've never said those people were Nyaupe. I said they were leading Nyaupe. I never said people. I've never
Honorable
said
Member,
people.
I will consult with the National Assembly table and then I will give the ruling at the appropriate time.
House Chair.
Sorry, there's a member behind you who's also standing on a point of order. So who are you deciding will speak?
I will speak.
Oh, yes.
Madam Chair, I heard your ruling. Your ruling amounts to a clap on the wrist on the actor who's the acting president.
Honorable Member,
She's got the audacity.
Honorable Member.
The audacity.
Honorable Matthias, can you please take your seat?
I'm standing on a point of order.
No, what I said, I have not ruled on that matter. All what I've said is that I will get advice from the NA table and I will then make my ruling thereafter. So no ruling has been made. Can you please take your seat? UDM.
House Chair, may I address you? House Chair,
I hereby move
since yesterday,
on
when you are
behalf of the
presiding...
United Democratic Movement,
Order, Honorable
that
Member.
the House notes that 15-year-old Leroy
Honorable
Mohamed
Members.
has made our country shine in the Golden Village.
Honorable Member.
Has won a gold medal.
Honorable Members. Can I ask you to take a seat? Let's allow the UDM to finish their point. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
I hereby move without notice on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House notes that 15-year-old Leroy Mohatle has made our country shine in the global village as he won a gold medal at the prestigious Gin International Ballet Competition, which was hosted by the Royal Academy of Dance in London on the 19th of September, 2015. Further notes that Mohatle, in addition to winning the gold medal, was presented with the Marco Fontaine Audience Choice Award. Knowledge is that he was among 76 contestants who came from different countries around the world. Further acknowledges that his victory has opened many doors, as he said that this achievement earned him many scholarship offers to dance for companies around the world. Congratulates him, his technical team, and coach for the excellent job and representation and the way he represented the country. Wishes him all the best in his future career. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. Motion agreed to. Honorable Member, I did ask yesterday that when members object, they must stand and go to the mic. Nobody has. Can I ask you to rise on your point of order?
Thank you, House Chair. The EFF stood and objected to this motion. But nonetheless, my point of order, since yesterday when you preside over this proceedings, every time an EFF member rises on a point of order, you dismiss them. And it's wrong. When the DA or the ANC stands up, you acknowledge them. It's very clear. You are compromising the whole process on our account. And Honorable Didiza, This must come to an end.
Honorable member, I take it that indeed your last statement is not a threat, because what happened, both on the occasion of a point of order raised by Honorable Steenhuisen and Honorable Paulse, I made a caution to both members. Honorable Paulse, and a point of order that was raised against him in respect of the F language, I asked your member, who responded and said he didn't say it. I then said, I will follow up on the matter. No ruling has been made. In the same instance, Honorable Maitias has raised a point of order in respect of what Honorable Shabangu has said. I gave Honorable Shabangu a chance to also, equally like Honorable Paulsen, to ask whether she did mention what she did. And I said, I will ask the advice from the NA table. On both instances, no ruling has been made. So I wouldn't agree with you, Honorable Member, because on both instances, no ruling has been made until we have considered the matters. That's only when we can. And I think it's important for me to remind honorable members, when an allegation is made and the chair has not heard, the appropriate thing you do is to ask the member whether an allegation preferred against him or her is true or not, and the member responds. And if the other party is not satisfied, you actually have to take the matter further by investigating. That's the procedure. And I hope, honorable members, we have understood one another on the process. Honorable Maitias?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
can you please be consistent?
yes.
I stood up on a point of order on utterances of Hazen,
Yes.
John,
Honorable
that
Estesen.
his utterances are unparliamentary because borders on private matters of members. So I stood up for you to rule on similarly, just as you ruled on the point of orders that were brought before you. Can you please rule and refer his matter also for consultation? with
Order.
Answer?
Honorable members,
That's what
can
we're
you
asking
please
for.
take a seat? Honorable Steenhuisen, can you please
Madam
take a
House
seat?
Chair, please may I address you?
I will address you afterwards. Can you take
May
a
I
seat
please
for
have an
now?
opportunity to address you?
Can you please take a seat? I said earlier, when there were exchanges between Honorable Paulse and Honorable Steenhuisen, who both said things that actually needs investigation, whether they're parliamentary or not, to each other. I said I would investigate, so I am not sure why members think no ruling is going to be made. A ruling will be made on all those matters. The NA table has noted those things. So can I please advise that you allow us to proceed with the business of the day? Honorable Steenhuisen?
I do just want to make one point in prejudging your ruling, if I may, and that is that this House, less than a month ago, passed legislation called the Maintenance Amendment Bill. And I think that we as members of Parliament have a duty to uphold the laws of South Africa that are passed here.
Honorable Steenhuisen, Honorable
what we should have
Steenhuisen.
is we should have the slogan, pay back the papgeld.
Honorable Paulse, can you please take your seat? Honorable Steenhuisen, I have asked that let me be allowed to make a ruling, and let's not prejudge what the ruling is going to be, nor start another new matter. Can I now recognize, Honorable Matthias, between you and Paulsen, who is,
I'm standing on behalf of the EFF at this point in time.
so what is the point of order?
The point of order is, because of your fear for a white fellow,
Honorable
you allowed
Steenhuisen.
him,
Honorable Steenhuisen.
you have allowed him, Madam Speaker, I stand on a point of order here.
It's not a point of order what you are raising. We are making a judgment.
I'm not making
and
a
on
judgment.
a matter that has not been ruled on. So can you please take your seat?
On which point did he stand up?
I reprimanded Honorable Steenhuisen, and I don't think you need to stand on a point of order.
He must not make us to remind him
Can
the
you
reason
please
why
take a seat?
he was deployed here from the,
Can I
from,
now recognize
from the municipality
the
where he comes from.
ANC?
The ANC moves without notice that the House notes with sadness the death of Zanele Naledi Ntomzodwa Moyo, daughter of Zimbabwe's higher and tertiary education minister Jonathan Moyo, who was found dead on Saturday the 17th October 2015 in her room at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. Further notes that the 20-year-old Zanele was studying for a degree in political science, international relations, and gender studies at the time of her death. Acknowledges that she was the second youngest of Professor Moyo's 5 daughters and was born in Kenya. Understands that the cause of death was still under police investigation. Conveys condolences to the Moyo family on the death of Zanele. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion.
House Chair, those are internal arrangement of the ANC. I object.
Honorable members, can I ask all of us again to respect our own rules? When you object, you just object. We don't need to hear your view on the reasons as to why you object. If you object, just object. Honorable member of the EFF.
Thank you. Before I read my motion...
You can read your statement, you don't have to have a preface.
No, before I read my motion without notice, can I request to address you on the previous matter?
No, I've closed on that matter and I'm allowing you to actually give your motion.
Thank you. I will continue with my motion. I rise on behalf of the EFF to move without notice that the House, one, note that the EFF in Emalahleni in Mpumalanga has opened a case of corruption against ANC councillors who are evicting people from municipal provided accommodation illegally and renting the accommodation out for monthly fees. Two, note that the community has raised their frustrations consistently with the municipality, but their petitions have fallen into deaf ears, as always. Three, further note that families that are evicted, some of them are child-headed households, and they are evicted without alternative form of accommodation. Four, we commend the fighters on the ground for putting the interest of the community forward to fight corruption and ensure access to decent housing. Five, call on communities from every corner of the country to report corruption and illegal acts by greedy ANC councillors everywhere it shows itself. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. ANC objects. Are there any further motions without notice? Yes, EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters to move without notice that the House note that students from poor communities are forced to pay more than 36,000 at Tuto Bopelo Nursing College for their first auxiliary course. Note that the college took a large number of students, more than their permissible intake, and as a result, they are using the requirement for additional payment of 16,000 Rand and exams to reduce their numbers to a permissible intake for second year. Acknowledge that the mistake of large intake was of the college management, not the students, and it is due to greed and commercialization of education and training, which is wrong, as some are preying on desperate, unemployed young people and their families to make quick money. Call on Tuto Bopelo Nursing College to treat students with dignity and respect and not rob them of their livelihoods, as some families are spending the last cent on their children's education. Call on government to reopen all nursing and teaching colleges that were closed post-1994 to take all students that are currently studying through private colleges and offer them free quality education. Further, call on all students to be vigilant when they deal with these private colleges, as a majority are just out to make quick cash without any quality education to speak of. I so move.
If there are No objections, I put the motion.
The ANC objects.
Thank you. ANC.
The African National Congress moves without notice that the House notes that the Golden Lions were crowned 2015 Currie Cup champions after defeating Western Province 32-24 in the final at Ellis Park on Saturday, the 24th October 2015. Recalls that the Lions side claimed the prize in emphatic style, winning all 12 of their matches, becoming the first side since the 1990s to go unbeaten in a season. Further recalls that this is the Lions' 11th Currie Cup title in their history. Acknowledges that the Golden Lions put a sterling performance and deserved to win against the Western Province, and congratulates the Golden Lions for winning the Currie Cup, wishes them the best in their future endeavors. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion.
The EFF objects.
Thank you. Objections noted. EFF.
Thank you, Chair. I rise on behalf of the EFF to move without notice that the House knows the recently released unemployment statistics by Stats SA yesterday, which shows increasing scourge of unemployment to now 25%. Note that unemployment remains the biggest threat to social and economic stability of this country. And if not addressed urgently, like students and their fees must fall movement, young, oppressed, unemployed, and marginalized who joined the EFF in the Economic Freedom March in their thousand yesterday will not be addressed and taken serious when mobile toilets and tires are burning at the Union Building. Acknowledge that the march celebrated borrowed ANC youth wage subsidy from the racist DA failed dismally, and it's time to consider state-led industrialization that will grow sustainable economy and create decent jobs. Further note that as long as South Africa's economy is dominated and controlled by white monopoly capital and multinational corporations, only profits and illicit financial flows will increase, not the economy or employment. Call on government to do away with tenders and high dependence on service providers and give young people tools, training, supervision, and decent wage instead of wasting money on tenders who only benefit those connected to the ANC leaders. Further, call on all companies to open their doors for young people to get training and skills to participate actively in the economy. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion.
ANC objects.
Thank you. ANC.
The African National Congress moves without notice that the House notes with sadness the passing on of Mvuzo Mbembe after a battle with cancer on Monday, October 19, at the ARWYP private hospital in Kempton Park. Recalls that Mr. Mbembe played an important role in development of South African football, more so in the 2013 African Cup of Nations and African Nations Championship in the capacity of the local organizing committee CEO, as well as former SABC executive. Acknowledges the pivotal role he has made over the years in contributing immensely in fighting racial segregation in sport during apartheid era, as well as his outstanding role in administering and developing sport in the new democratic dispensation. Believes that his death is indeed an enormous loss, not only to his family, but to the country as a whole, and conveys its condolences to his family, friends, and relatives. I so move.
Thank you. If there are no objections, I put the motion.
EFF objects.
Objections noted. Are there any further motions without notice? There being none, this concludes the motions without notice. Honorable members, I've been advised that parties have agreed that declarations of vote will be limited to 2 minutes, each for the rest of the term, and that this will apply as of today. 2 minutes. Can I ask the Secretary to read the first order of the day?
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report
of Portfolio Committee on Social Development.
I now recognize the Honorable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. I move that the report be adopted.
The declarations have been requested. I now recognize the DA. Well, for that one, I'm
Thank
not
you.
responsible.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The DA supports the brief RRR report. It is a true reflection of the current state of the department. However, the current state of the department is not a healthy one. In fact, if you follow the history of the department in the last couple of years, it is terminally ill and its entities need ICU. In fact, only 67% of its targets were met. The department actually regressed on the 69% of targets met in 2014-15. While only 67% of targets were met, the department did manage, however, to spend 99% of its budget. An obvious disjuncture, to say the least. Where did the money go? The AG recorded 17 million rand in irregular expenditure in the department. SASA recorded in excess of 40 million rand, and the NDA 1.6 million in irregular expenditure, all being supply management process failures. Then we are advised that the department returned in excess of 1.4 billion to the Treasury unspent. 9 Kwanda sites were not established, and over 2,000 graduate social workers have not been employed by the department because of insufficient funding. But 1.4 billion is returned to the Treasury coffers. An equivalent of 1 million rand a month was spent on foreign travel alone, but there is insufficient funding for social workers. SASA is now the South African Seriously Sick Agency. The AG advised that interventions were required in 5 of the 6 key risk areas, and they did not comply with legislation in 5 of the 6 audited areas. The AG also recorded in excess of 5 million rand in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The NDA left us confused.
Honorable Member, your time is up. The EFF. Order, honorable members.
Thank you, Chairperson. The EFF reject the adoption of the budget review and recommendation report from the Portfolio Committee on Social Development. The Department of Social Development has a constitutional mandate to provide sector-wide national leadership in social development by developing and implementing programs for the eradication of poverty and social protection and development amongst the poorest of the poor. But the really on-the-ground points to the corrupt use of this department by the ANC to further its political objectives by providing food parcels to poor South Africans during election time. Over and above these issues, the Auditor General has raised concerns about unmitigated culture on irregular expenditure in this department. Among the factors the AG mentioned is the fact that management did not prepare regular, accurate and complete financial and performance reports that are supported and evidenced by reliable information. The corruption in this department directly comes from the outsourcing of key functions such as provision of grants. The department should have offices in every town or villages to facilitate the payment of social grants and must not rely on service providers to do so. The department cannot be trusted with ensuring the well-being of the millions of poor South Africans. The minister is shameless in using the resources of this department of narrow political aims. She is more concerned about leading marches against the paintings of president's private parts instead of fighting for social well-being of our people. We reject this report. Thank you.
The IFP.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chairperson. The annual review of the work of government presents us with the opportunity to face reality. Our reality being the fact that South Africa is plagued by unprecedented levels of poverty and inequality. This places a severe burden on the Department of Social Development. Against this background, the IFP wishes to emphasize a number of pressing issues. Firstly, we believe that more must be done to fight gender-based violence. We don't need statistics to tell us that our current efforts are insufficient. But social development cannot carry this burden alone, and we need a greater synergy between the different government departments. It is our view that the critical shortage of social workers in our country requires additional funding in line with the Minister's vision of 1 social worker per ward, which is now non-negotiable. SASSA beneficiaries, the most vulnerable sectors of our society, continue to fall prey to loan sharks and even family members who rob them of their livelihoods. Loopholes that allow for illegal grant deductions must be closed through legislation. In addition, the plight of people with disabilities remain a grave concern. Many children with disabilities are excluded from the schooling system, while most government departments are failing to meet their own minimum target of the employment of people with disabilities. This status quo can no longer be allowed to continue. Finally, more must be done to curb substance abuse. We must ensure that every child is able to access education at a young age through ECD centres, and NPOs that provide vital services on behalf of the state must be empowered both through the necessary skills and greater financial support. The AG's challenges that he identified must not only be acknowledged, but they must be resolved without delay. The IFP supports this report and the recommendations table. Thank you.
Thank you. The ANC.
Honorable Chair and the House at large, it gives me pleasure to state today in South Africa that the Department of Social Development has achieved clean audit during this current year and previous years, and I congratulate them for that. I also want to actually inform the House that the DPSA, as well as other countries, have actually applauded the fact that we do so much in South Africa in caring for the poor and the marginalized. But I must also say that this department is strong, is full-time fighting corruption. Corruption that originates from all sources of life, whether it's communities, whether it's officials, but it's a matter that they demonstrated in their presentations, which actually were adopted and applauded by all the members of the Portfolio Committee. But to come here and grandstand and behave as if we never thoroughly interrogated the department and adopted the budget. We did adopt this budget, and this department is 100% healthy. Those who are actually doubting Thomas's, they must try once again, but not now. This department has actually achieved clean audit and its entities, all of them, and has actually expelled almost 60% of those people who were involved in corruption. This is what was presented, this is what we know, and this is what we stand for. We congratulate the minister for doing excellent work in actually addressing the
Honorable
poor.
Member,
Thank you
your
very
time
much.
is over. I have not received any other party that wishes to make a declaration. I will therefore put the motion. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? Who is objecting? Maxine, stand.
Madam Chair, the EFF objects.
Thank you, Honorable Matthias. Are you the acting Chief Whip? Are you the acting Chief Whip?
Do you want a direct answer, House Chair?
Yes. I was going to say, please advise so that and please be sharp so that when you do the objection, you stand so that I can recognize that you are objecting, okay?
Okay.
All right. I now put the questions. Those in favor say aye. And those against say no. I think the ayes have it. I'll ask the table to record the objections of the EFF. Can the secretary read the second order?
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry.
I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thanks, House Chair. I move that the report be adopted.
Thank you very much. I've received a request from parties to make their declarations. Honorable the member of the DA.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, you will recall that last week when the adjustment budget was tabled, the Honourable Matsoni from the DA objected to the process through which the BRRR reports were dealt with in committee. And we added our voice to that objection in the Trade and Industry Committee because the BRRR report was only dealt with the day before the adjustment budget was tabled, which means that there was absolutely no prospect of the Minister having had the opportunity to read or internalize or to agree with anything that was said in the report, which reduced the BRRR process to something of a box-ticking exercise. Nevertheless, if one looks at the adjustment budget with regards to DTI, you will see that the DTI's budget consists mainly of a series of very significant business incentive programs, the biggest of which, as we know, is the automotive incentive program. In his adjustment budget speech, the Minister noted that for the first time, a whole array of frontline services would have to be cut to fund the above-inflation salary increases of the civil service, and the same is true in the DTI. For the first time, House Chairperson, frontline incentive programs, the flagship programs of the DTI, will receive less money, or in fact, in one case, no money. The program will be cut altogether so as to be able to afford the above-inflation salary increases in the department. Yesterday, we received news following the budget that the MSEP, the Manufacturing Competitiveness Enhancement Project, will be cut altogether, one of the DTI's flagship projects to assist businesses in investing in new machinery. And so we are left with a bizarre situation where we have more staff in the department, paid ever higher salaries, left to deliver fewer and fewer services to the business community of South Africa. And for that reason, we object to the budget and the report. Thank you.
Thank you, the EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. We reject this report for the following reason. Central to the Economic Freedom March that was attended by more than 50,000 people yesterday, the message is clear, is straightforward. As long as South Africa economy continue to led by white capital monopoly and multinational corporations who now have the ANC leaders in their pocket, it does not matter how much foreign direct invest will attract as a country. The economy will not grow, you like it or not. South Africa will fail to industrialize, and scourge of inequality and unemployment will persist in most communities. The state must stop sitting on the sidelines, hoping multinational and capital will come around to assist with the developmental objectives of South Africa. This is not going to happen. It is the only state-led industrialization with a coherent and well-coordinated group of state-owned entities that the DTI will have a meaningful role to play to build a sustainable economy that will give us jobs with decent pay. What is compounding? The purpose of the BRRR, not only with the Portfolio Committee of Trade and Industry, but also with other committees, is the fact that the exercise is done just to tick boxes, but there is no effort to understand problems analytically, and therefore recommendations made are redundant. The meaning and purpose of this report are not being adopted in the House with the spirit of contributing to allocation of limited resources. Instead, it is now reduced to by the way exercise. What does not assist the committee members to contribute is that draft reports are prepared and sent to members with only 19 hours before the reports are considered for adoption by the committee. The department has failed to develop mechanisms to ensure 75% of public procurement is of designated products to drive local economy, but the current figure is
Order,
not even
honourable
close to
member, your time
50%,
is up.
and report is failing to stand and put forward the recommendation.
IFP.
We reject the adoption of this report. You can scream.
IFP.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. It's imperative that our economic
Order.
growth...
Honourable member, you will caucus outside. Thank you.
Thank you, House Chair. It's imperative that our economic growth be led by our consumption-driven sectors, which are growing twice as fast as the production sectors. However, the Industrial Policy Plan, IPAP, located in a vision of the National Development Plan, is based on the need to bring about significant sustainable, structural, and not consumption-driven changes to the South African economy. The exchange rate showed a 0.5% increase for May this year for the first time in many months, which is extremely important, not only for the DTI, but for the South Africa as a whole. Exports should and must be the priority, and this contributes to our labor-intensive, value-added economic activity in the production sector, led by the mining and downstream manufacturing and engineering. We need more intense incentives to commit the private sector into supporting local manufacture, as government just did with the steel industry. We also feel that the tax incentives must be advertised more aggressively, and this will require a bigger budget. Another concern is the volatile and overvalued exchange rate and the quest to improve exports. And the same can be said for the high costs and inefficiencies at ports and associated with freight and logistics systems. The DTI and its entities are committed to improving trade and investment relations in South Africa and must do so through the creation of fair regulatory environment and not through a host of laws and regulations that could hamper doing just that. In accepting this report, the IFP in plain English wants to see more carrot and less stick from the department in order to build a fully diversified, globally competitive manufacturing sector to support the most important labor-absorbing growth and social stability in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. The ANC.
Yes, thank you, House Chair. May I say at the outset that the ANC supports this. But look, there are a couple of things. One agrees with some of the points made and disagrees with others, but in many instances it's due to a lack of information. People keeping up to date, too busy on social. Now, with respect to the manufacturing competitive enhancement program, this program was so successful, 5 billion having been originally allocated and set aside, that it was exhausted, the 5 billion, far sooner than had been projected. So if anything, the DTI had underestimated the success of the program. So what has happened now is, yes, indeed, the DTI has had to suspend this. No, for the moment. That is, unfortunately, I'm not sure what papers you're reading, but this is a medium-term expenditure framework, 3 years. And in April 2016, this is likely to continue. So I say likely because I'm not a prophetess. There were 1,153 entities with acquisition of capital equipment and re-engineering of business processes to improve their competitiveness and so on. We made only 2 recommendations, and the ANC supports both. These are one to do with the strengthening of the incentive programs and the other to deal with low-income people. There's going to be the expedition of the introduction of regulations related to credit life insurance on the maximum interest rates that these corporations who want to milk our people will do. and to protect them. And thank you to DTI for
The
seeing this.
motion is
Thank
that
you.
the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
Yes, not the objection of EFF.
Objection of the EFF noted.
House Chair, the objection of the Democratic Alliance.
Objection of the Democratic Alliance will be noted. The Secretary will now read the third order.
Consideration of budgetary review and accommodation report of Portfolio Committee on Basic Education.
I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, House Chair. I move that the report be adopted.
I have received requests for declarations. I now recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, House Chairperson. In the last 2 weeks, the attention of our nation has been rightly focused on the issue of university fees. And in raising their voices, the students have forced government to finally address their plight. But in the background stand the silent majority. They are the millions of young, mainly black South Africans who don't finish school, let alone university. Of the learners who entered grade 1 in 2003, only 36% passed matric last year, and just 14% qualified for admission to university. And here is another uncomfortable statistic. Only 12% of black South Africans enter higher education, compared to 60% of whites. This explains Stats SA's report last year, which found that the proportion of black youth in skilled employment actually regressed between 1994 and 2014. The truth is, House Chairperson, if you're a black child born into a poor household, the odds of getting a decent education and building a career are stacked very firmly against you. And it is all well and good to stand here and talk about targets, audits, and what boxes have been ticked. But be warned, there is a crisis brewing in this country which is far graver than the issue of university fees. And that is the failure of our school system to give every child access to a quality education. Government needs to act now before it's too late. We need a bold new plan that gives every child the chance of a better life. The DA objects to the report. Thank you.
Thank you. The EFF.
The EFF rejects the adoption of this BRRR report from Basic Education Portfolio Committee. South Africa is facing an education crisis, and this crisis will blow up in our face soon enough because we have a political leadership that is either unable to grasp the severity of the crisis or simply unwilling to provide decisive leadership. This BRRR is not breaking new ground in the analysis of the problem and the intervention it proposes for basic education. South Africa is the worst education system of all middle-income countries that participate in cross-national assessment of the education achievement. Of 100 people that start school, only 50 make it to grade 12, 40 pass, only 12 qualify for university, and those between 18 and 24-year-olds who do not acquire some form of post-secondary education are at a distinct of economic disadvantage and are not only struggle to find full-time employment, but also have one of the highest probabilities of being unemployed for a sustained period of time or permanently. But the reality is that even though the BRRR claims that 99% of the learner and teacher support material were delivered this year, thousands of schools in rural provinces like Lupompo, Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga, and the Northwest spend the first quarter of the year without necessary learner material. The reality is that the department's ASIDI program has failed to ensure the provision of proper infrastructure to rural schools in particular, which still remains without proper toilets, without libraries and other necessities for basic education. We need a solution to this crisis, and these are the solutions. There must be universal access to libraries and computer laboratories in all registered South African schools. No child should ever study under a tree. Only qualified teachers should be appointed. SADU must not be given powers to appoint or fire teachers as they seem to do at the current moment. There must be an immediate implementation of the norms and standards for basic education. The department must follow up on all kids that drop out of school. Thank you.
Order, Honorable Member, time is up. Thank you. IFP.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Our basic education sector is in desperate need of an improvement in the quality of teaching and learning through the provision of adequate quality infrastructure and learning and teaching support materials. But the sad fact of this matter is that support material never arrives in time at many of our schools. Schools eventually resort to photocopying the learning support materials so that teaching is not delayed. Shortages of skilled teachers in the language medium of Afrikaans are a recurring problem in the province of the Eastern Cape, and the quality learner performance in the subjects of mathematics and physical science remains extremely poor. The standards required by students to successfully bridge the gap between basic and higher education are in many instances an unreachable reality, and this can only be viewed as colossal departmental failure. We are simply failing our learners of this country through inadequate basic education infrastructure, unskilled or too few teachers. This department has a mammoth task ahead of it if it is to arrest and overcome its many and varied challenges. Decisive leadership, coupled with sound administration, must be the order of the day. The proper education of our youth is non-negotiable. The department, through the minister, must ensure that it occurs. The IFP supports this report. Thank you.
Thank you, the UDM.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Ministers, and Honorable Members. Provision of qualitative basic education is not an isolated matter from the general and overall need to provide qualitative and accessible education to the nation, and consistent with Section 29(1)(a) of the Constitution. It is also part of the resolving the triple challenge confronting the nation. Accordingly, the United Democratic Movement would like to drive home the following policy matters. The fact that the early childhood development is not part of basic education system is compromising quality. More so given the cognitive development process of a child. In this regard, we repeat the call to integrate this stage within the mainstream of education. Our basic education system must interface with the higher education and be tailor-made to serve the market. This is not only important, but urgent, because the failure of our school system is central to our failure to provide for the need of the labor market, to increase social mobility, and to reduce income inequality. In supporting this report, the United Democratic Movement further calls for the department to cut its high catering budget in favor of funding school infrastructure program driven through ASIDI. Also finalize the teacher profiling by the end of the current financial year and report to Parliament at the beginning of 2016-2017 financial year. And lastly, penalize all officials who fail to pay service providers within the government policy turnaround time of 30 days. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member, the ANC.
Chairperson, thank you. The Portfolio Committee would like to commend the department for getting the unqualified audit opinion this year, and also together with looking at the provincial audit outcomes this year as a committee, what we have observed is that there's great improvement where we have seen the number of provinces improving in their audit outcomes, where we moved from 5 to 6 with unqualified, and also 2 with qualified with findings, but also we are very much concerned with one of the provinces, Limpopo, that keeps on getting disclaimer even with the interventions that have been made, and that is one of our recommendations as the committee, is to say the department needs to go very closer to the provincial department in Limpopo so that we see to it how the province can be rescued from what is happening there. On the issues of service delivery, the department again has done a lot. A majority of the targets have been achieved, and as a committee, we are very pleased with the progress on the ASIDI program. All the targets have been met in such a way that the project is continuing in a manner that it even surpassed the targets that have been placed, and making a threat on the issues of finance when it comes to that project. And that is one of the recommendations that we have come up, as to say we want to see the project of ASIDI being well looked after so that we can be in a position to improve on that, and also make sure that the department deliver on the National Development Plan as it is targeted. However, yes, in the report, we do even touch on some of the challenges, like the issue of challenges when it comes to the issue of Maths grade 9. But again, as a committee, we're very pleased with some of the programs that the department has come up with, like 1+4, where the department is trying by all means to
Honourable
improve
Member, your time is
that.
up.
As the ANC, we support this BRRR report. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? Honourable Steenhuisen.
Honourable House Chair, will you please record the objection of the Democratic Alliance?
Objection of the DA recorded. Honourable Matthias.
The EFF objects.
Objection of the EFF will be recorded. Can the Secretary read the fourth order?
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Human Settlements.
I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thanks, House Chair. I move that the report be adopted.
I've received the request for declaration from parties. We will consider that first. The DA.
Nakhensa mthamashitulu. Mthamashitulu ningazani ngiya ngopfu ka speech xa mina la vula ku no hi ri DA ya seketela xipiko lexi xa ndzawulo ya vutshamo bya vaaki. Mara loko nkarhi hi seketela exipiko lexi ku na swin'wanyana leswi ni vulaka ku ri swi fanele swi vulavuriwa mayelana na leswi ndzawulo yi nga tirhisa xiswona eka lembe ximali leri hi humaka ka rona. Chairperson, when one looks at the Department of Human Settlements, one can submit as a department that really knows how to spend the money. But then the delivery does not match the money that is being spent. For example, 98% of the money for building houses was spent, but only 84% of the houses were built. From a target of 112,000, 96,000 houses were built, a shortfall of 17,000. And if you look at an average South African family, we are talking about 63,000 people that could have been housed as a result of this shortfall. And on top of that, 775 million was spent on rectifying houses that were built incorrectly. And I'm glad that the ANC today moved the motion that we debate it, because this thing is robbing a lot of our people adequate housing, and I will support that motion pass through. And one of the things that it's a big worry is that of the target of title deeds, only 34% of the new built RDP houses were given title. And that's like a 34% achievement rate that even the Department of Education that we just come from will have failed the department on that score. So it's something that, that really worries us, and we do hope that going forward, the department will look at issues of PNG houses, title deeds, and informal settlement upgrades. But as a DA, we do support this budget. Thank you very much, Nakens.
Thank you. EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. The EFF rejects the adoption of this budget and recommendations by the Portfolio Committee. it must be noted that the EFF will never come to this house nor to portfolio committees and support the ANC propaganda, because they use their majority in portfolio committees and in this house to pass through some issues that are in fact not suitable for our own people.
Order, honorable
For
members.
instance, the housing projects that this department is pushing through. The budget review and recommendation report for this department and its entities make mockery not only of the role of Parliament and its process, but also the legislation that guides the process of budget review and recommendation thereafter. The EFF, as I said, we reject the budget. The report has nothing to suggest that the country is actually facing human settlement and housing crisis. As a matter of fact, every budget that is passed through this house that suggests to undermine our people, we will forever reject it. Many South Africans today are roaming in streets homeless, are being led to settle in houses that are not suitable for occupation, but the ANC wants us to come here and adopt such budgets. The report even make reference to incorrect economic growth. What is alarming, however, is the fact that this department continues to spend billions year in and year out, but targets are never achieved and houses are never delivered. Majority do not have access to decent houses and sanitation.
Honorable
In cases
member,
where the
your
department
time
fails
is
to
up.
spend the budget, like in this case, with the under-expenditure of 5 billion, we will
IFP.
never support the
Honorable
ANC
member,
propaganda.
Your time is up. IFP. Malbongwe.
Ngiyathokoza kakhulu Sihlalo. Just to put a disclaimer that the Honorable Sithole is not feeling well, who is serving on this committee. And on behalf of the IFP, I would like to make the following submission. This year has seen a steady decline in the delivery of housing to people of South Africa by Department of Human Settlements, departmental underspending in the provinces of Gauteng, Limpopo, Western Cape, as well as overspending in the Eastern Cape province on ratification must be decisively dealt with moving forward. In terms of the dire need for housing in South Africa, every resource allocated must be utilized to the maximum. Stiff penalties should be put in place for provincial departments that overspend or are engaged in reckless and wasteful expenditure. We can no longer afford to continue this way, and we can no longer afford to get it wrong. Internally, the department seems to be in chaos. There is no stability, 106 current vacancies at senior level, as well as very many acting positions of senior officials is evidence of a department in disarray. Without proper management structures in place, one can never expect to balance this budget. Shifting of funds between provinces is also clear evidence of poor planning, and we have mentioned as well that failing to plan is planning to fail. The result being slow service delivery, as is the case currently. Of great concern, though, is the ongoing failure by the department to formulate and establish policy as regards to hostel developments. Our hostels are not fit for animals and are in dire need of upkeep and maintenance, and we are all receiving from the department, all we are receiving rather, is silence. The problem therefore will not go away even if the minister pretends that it's not there. So we need to start to take this issue seriously and deal with it. Having raised those issues, hoping that they'll be addressed, the IFP will support this budget report. Thank you very much.
The NFP.
Honorable Chairperson, judging by the long list of recommendations contained in the report tabled here today, one can safely conclude that the Portfolio Committee on Human Settlement have thoroughly interrogated the various reports upon which these recommendations are based. It is also impossible to conclude, Honorable Chairperson, that the long list of recommendations suggests that the Department of Human Settlement is falling short of the expected performance for such a crucial state department. The provision of housing speaks to the basic needs of all human beings, and South Africa has made significant strides during the past 21 years in providing affordable houses for those who had been denied such a basic need by the apartheid government. The question remains, however, whether the government is delivering in the quantity and quality that is capable of. The answer certainly is no. The overall performance of the department based on the approved annual performance plan 2014-2015 is 70%. That means, Honorable Chairperson, out of 146 approved annual targets, 102 were achieved, but 44 were not achieved. Are we to be satisfied with the 70% delivery rate where we could have had 100%? Again, the answer is sadly no. We still have no policy on the backyard dwellers, and the white paper on human settlement still remains an intention only. Why is the Department of Human Settlement dragging its feet on these two critical issues which are crucial for the review and development of housing and human settlement policies? When we look at the list of recommendations, one phrase keeps on recurring: fast track, fast track. It is fast track this and fast track that, over and over again. The department seemingly is slow to implement programs and processes developed to enhance and expedite service delivery. And then when we look surprised,
Honourable Member, your
when
time
other
is
citizens
up.
become frustrated with the slow pace of service delivery.
Honourable Member,
In conclusion,
your time is up.
The NFP welcomes the Portfolio Committee report. I thank you.
UDM. Honourable Filtane.
We are here dealing with the Department of Human Settlements. But the irony is that the contents of this report are most unsettling. There's no report on expenditure on farm dwellers. And this is supposed to change the lives of those people and improve the quality of their household lifestyle. This report is presented against the backdrop of a poorly performing economy, a situation that calls for over-reliance by the poor citizens of this country on government to provide housing. On the other hand, the cost of building has gone up by around 7%, with inflation flying at just over 6%. A shrinking government budget consumed by the above-mentioned factors spells disaster for those who rely on government for this basic need called housing. Mark that. But this situation has been compounded by widespread under expenditure, as mentioned by my colleagues who have just been here in provinces like Limpopo, Gauteng, and so on, and also in the area of program delivery support services, where only 70% was spent. This is exacerbated by the situation that there's fruitless, wasteful, and unauthorized expenditure over 3 years. The report is supported, though, by the UTM, just for the sake of the poor, on the basis of the committee's recommendation. On that basis, we would say, yes, it can go through, because if we say no, then the poor can only get poorer by the minute. But be warned, repetitive, wasteful expenditure is costly to the poor citizens of this country. You are committing social crime by doing that. Be warned. Thank you.
The ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. The African National Congress supports this budget, but we are aware that this report takes place against the backdrop of the reality that many people still live in poor conditions, without access to basic services in a proliferation of marginalized informal settlements, as a result of poor planning and geospatial dislocations of the apartheid legacy. These informal settlements are located far from economic opportunities and are in many instances without access to water, sanitation facilities, and refuse removal. Therefore, the Portfolio Committee takes stock of some of these challenges as it provides the context within which the Department of Human Settlement and its entities operate. Through its oversight, the Portfolio Committee on Human Settlement recorded the following key observations which are in the report. But one of the things that we want to note is that the department has received an unqualified audit for 3 years in a row. But however, what is concerning is that similar previous financial adverse findings have been recorded. And we want to therefore say the department needs to improve its accountability and compliance. We also note that the spending patterns as on August 2015 show that the department has a minus 5.3% deviation from the norm, which means it has improved its spending, but we also note that there is decline in complete houses that have been built. There is lack of technical and operational capacity for program and project planning and implementation as well as monitoring. There is a lack of adequate pipeline planning and synergy between the departments, provinces, and municipalities. And therefore, we have made recommendations.
Honourable Member, your time is up.
And we support the report.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
Yes, House Chair, note the objection of the EFF.
The objection of the EFF is noted. This concludes the business of the day, and the House is adjourned.